Oops. G'day, guys. Let me just. What the hell is it? I'm back. Fuck. I was getting like a double. I had two boxes and I was sort of coming in via two connections. I don't know. Anyway, StreamYard. Some sort of bloody issue. Anyway, sorry for being late. What are we? 13 minutes late? Fuck. Anyway, I was running around naked. I just got out of the shower and realised I was late and getting my coffee ready at the same time and all these sort of things and running around like a mad chook. Yeah, I was, anyway, because I realised what the time was. And I go, oh shit, yeah, one of those days. It's Harry time. Oh, thanks, Luke. Too much. Is it that bad? I better show this. Another one of Luke's handy jobs. Oops. Wait, don't jump. Harry streams in 5 minutes. Fucking hell, you guys are desperate. Oh, God, that just really tickled my funny bone. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Luke, in particular you. God. G'day, Daniel. God, you should have seen me just a few minutes ago, how scruffy I was. Yeah, running like mad, like a mad chook around. Ooh, I was a free range chook. What the fuck? That's all I could say at that moment while I was butt naked. Yes. Good evening to you, Lamps. Good to see you, mate. Ah, you evening people. Yes, we are very early here in the morning in Tassie. G'day, Shell. Yes, it's a crazy morning in my neck of the woods. Yes. So yeah, running around like a silly goose. Oh, I just noticed. Oh, he's really asking for it, isn't he? I need to troll him today. You're it, blinkers. Anyway, seen Harry? No, I haven't seen him. Definitely not. Mate, Penzi. Look, yes, I was all over the place. all over the place. Yeah, sounding like Father Christmas, a demented Father Christmas. I don't know, actually. Somebody said that he's still alive and kicking, but he's sort of given up on YouTube altogether, on social media. Yeah, I haven't actually seen him. I don't know whether he's still got a Facebook page or whatever. No idea. But yeah, I think he's sort of just given up on YouTube in general. So look, don't know, but that's what I sort of heard. Now that could be a rumor, it could be, who knows. Yes, my 1 minute mark. Yes. It will move through. Bob got tired of the criticism of stopped blogging. Okay, fair enough. Yep. Look, a lot of people have actually mentioned that on some different carnival sort of YouTube sites where their comments being brought up, and that's what I've noticed. So I don't know personally. It may be the case. You know, people have family lives, all sorts of issues that can actually happen. They may have to become a primary carer for someone and don't have the time. There's a lot of things that actually can happen in their life that can basically derail. You know, they could have an accident, so they could get killed by being run over by a vehicle. All sorts of things can happen to people. So, you know, sometimes people just sign off or basically say, you know, like throw in the towel with everything and just go bush or go to the tropics, or go around the world, you know, just hitching rides and, you know, sort of, yeah. So people do all sorts of things. You know, I think we can't, you know, we can't base anything on just rumors and all that. You know, so who knows, basically. G'day, Harold. Good to see you, mate. And you're an animal. Good to see you as well. And the nurse. There's trouble. Can you please keep T1 under control? He needs it. Stay calm. Always trying to. It's the only way to be chilled out and relaxed. Am I? I do sometimes. Yes. It's only where it's only when the issue really is important to me I can get. But most of the time I'm pretty chilled out, believe me. Thank you. Yes, I was sort of getting like, if you look at the sort of the StreamYard thing, I was getting actually 2 connections. I don't know why it sort of like was looping back on it. Yeah, I was running something earlier, and I don't know whether that established a connection through my VPN. I turned my VPN off, but when I get it, I must have retained, because I'd come in just to make sure that all my settings were properly. So I think, yeah, could have been that, more than likely. But it was really weird, so I had to sort of get out to sort of disable that connection completely. Call him what he is, fucking troll. Oh, I'm glad you found it hilarious. Oh yeah, the 5-minute thing. That's it. Yes, I suspected it was that. Thanks, mate. So you want cartoon versions? I'll have to turn myself into a cartoon like Sky. Oh, you did it wrong. That'd be weird. Infamous, more than likely, what most of my friends would consider me, rather than legend. Pick something Frank or Salad Boy wrongly recently said and shred it. Actually, I haven't actually seen anything of Frank's for ages. I have absolutely no idea. I still subscribe to Paul's. I mean, yeah. Look, it's YouTube. You got to be colourful. I call him Salad Boy. Frankie used to call him Rat Boy. But the reality is, look, most of his stuff is pretty good. I find that most of Paul Saladino's stuff is really spot on, quite interesting. It's only in recent times, both me and Bart have sort of, we're a bit concerned that he's associating too much with people like Ray Peat type characters and vegans and people like that. And he seems to, I don't know whether it's looking at stuff with him and sort of being more a flexible carnivore or semi-carnivore or whatever. But it's a really strange type of sort of behavior. In my book, I just think Frank thinks glucose is the best fuel source and is helpful to consume since all energy sources will become glucose in your body. Oh, Frank's talking shit. That sounds more like Ray Peat. That's Ray Peat shit. This is the problem. We've got these Ray Peat characters that are infiltrating the actual carnivore community and trying to influence. And these two Italian boys basically are being influenced quite heavily. So, they used to have their spaghetti western on the YouTube constantly, and now basically both of them are basically starting to promote more or less elements of Ray Peat. So that degenerate is falling apart. He won't even front up because he's so sick and so falling, in such a bad state. And he's new messiah or something, or somebody, a person of wisdom. Give us a fucking break. What a joke. Ray Peat struggles to string a couple of words together because he's not eating enough animal products. And if you don't have enough taurine in your diet, you will basically build a lot of those protein amyloids in your brain and go demented. Taurine actually breaks them down. So if you're not consuming animal food sufficiently, you're not going to get enough taurine, are you? Because the biosynthesis declines with age. And you're not getting enough beef into you, and you're getting too much sugar, you're going to basically become more demented. And that's what's happened to Ray Peat. That's why he can't string a couple of words together anymore. He struggles. That's why he won't front up. And Robbie's, when he's there, he's always basically, behind the scenes, doesn't actually show his face. So that should tell you a lot about his degeneration. And he's younger than my father. My father's 85 and they can string a hell of a lot more words, and even with his poor English. So it's just a joke, to say the least, that these people are being influenced by this. But they're quite crafty, because what they do is they use reductionist science. When you use reductionist science, you can actually string up all sorts of garbage. And that's how they operate. They say, oh, if you look at this pathway, yeah, well, we can actually, Thomas actually did something recently on heat shock proteins, an mTOR. But also there is, too much heat shock proteins can be an issue as well. Too little can be an issue as well. There's a balance. And normal humans, exercise, eat in a certain way, or used to. not every 2 hours, and would actually balance that as a normal thing, as a normal course of the day, without requiring to do all these special, I must count the minutes or some other BS to get the maximum, benefit or whatever. So it's a whole lot of nonsense. Humans never lived like that. But the problem is, what's happening is these people are using reductionist science to push certain barrows. It's a bit like, the way holistically Bart has explained how the, phosphocreatine whole system, within the actual muscles, the filaments, how they move together, how they actually are all interconnected. One of those cogs stops, your muscles can't operate anymore. You're dead. But reductionists will basically see these as separate systems and then make claims about, you need sugar because that pathway cannot work without sugar, even though endogenously you can create it, and all these other are supportive and, demand-driven gluconeogenesis with the right amount of fatty acids that are going there supporting the electron chain that can actually then support the phosphocreatine system. So all those connections are there. And, Bart, being an empiricist and a proper science, explains the mechanisms, how these things work very, very correctly. But these guys will actually just look at these reductionists, these pathways, and go, oh, no, you need sugar. Otherwise, this won't work. And we know that basically you've only got enough sugar just for that, or just for that actual muscle contraction. And if you don't have, the oxidative phosphorylation system of your mitochondria functioning, you're dead in the water. But they don't tell you that because they want to push their reductionist nonsense and then push their narratives to basically support that. And the problem is, Paul has fallen into the same trap with PUFA, this sort of reductionist thing. Oh, look at all these studies about PUFA. Even though we've been consuming far higher levels, as I showed you, tenfold. That's 1,000% more PUFA in the past. And apparently people didn't have fatty liver or any of these diseases back then. How come now that we've got 10 times less pork or lard in our diet per capita, we've got more fatty liver? It just doesn't gel properly. How can an old fart, 88 years old, outliving his parents, consume 25 eggs a day, 17.5 grams of PUFA, and most of it omega-6? Do you know what I mean? You have to question their arguments. Their arguments aren't valid because there are all these paradoxes. We've got the French paradox when we talk about saturated fats, and we've got all these other paradoxes. But they actually tell you something. They tell you that those hypotheses are wrong, because if they were right, they would be always right, like gravity, like the speed of light, or like this or whatever, is replicatable. Now, speed of light, there's a few other measurement things that, because they actually double measure and all that, and there are a few arguments, philosophical arguments and views on that. I do have an actually experimental way. I actually said to some physicists how they could actually experiment in a one-way measurement, but I won't go into that. That's one of my secrets. Let's see what happens. You may see my comments somewhere around on the interwebs in that regard, if you go around on physics sites, which I visit. Nice one, Luke. Fire that up and just enlarge it appropriately. Oops. Oh, when someone says they are vegan for health reasons, 45 minutes of soothing and relaxing meditating, I mean, no more sense for studying and thinking. I get the humor. Anyway, we were, StreamYard has moved. Give me a sec. Let me just find my spot. Where was I? Oh, fuck. Daniel, what's Daniel saying exactly, Harry? I'm not sure. I'm going through a major recovery period for now, but I'm still here causing trouble. Good for you, mate. Good for you. You know, so I mean, I did send something to Luke today, and I did send something to someone else as well who asked me about thyroid and all that. I haven't made the video yet on my thyroid protocol. I do apologise. It's the time limit, but there's also stuff there that there's an angle where methylation plays a role as well in that pathway. Actually, the funny thing is, you know, estrogen is an issue with it as well. Plus, there's also methylation issues which are related. So, you know, if people are having issues, you know, consider both with gallstones, and I'm going to make a video, and with thyroid. There is sulfur, very important, and so is, you know, vitamin D for all autoimmune diseases, and also basically things like taurine and choline, which is really important for the methylation cycle, and the liver health, which is also affects thyroid and gallstones and all that sort of stuff. But you know, I will explain those things in more detail in the video. But for people that are desperate for some solutions, you do need taurine to deal with that sludge, to mobilize it, to clear it out. You need taurine, and you need taurine also to help with the breaking down, and choline as well, to breaking down those cholesterol stones and stuff like that. So, you know, if you eat a species appropriate diet, you usually don't have these problems, but a lot of us did inappropriate things in the past, and that's why we are where we are, asking for solutions now for our health problems. So yeah, I will get to that. I do have a cancer protocol that I do want to do this week. So a lot of people I've caused it to myself by actually asking people to email me, and I've had an absolute fucking flood of emails in my inbox, and I've looked at it and I'm going, oh shit. Basically, you know, having a day job is really hard to basically focus on those sort of things. But I did notice a number of people with cancer issues, so I sort of prioritizing that to give them some idea of how to basically deal with all these different pathways with, you know, in terms of the fixing the mitochondrial side, to in terms of basically dealing with, obviously, the sugar side. It should be, I mean, nobody should actually be surprised that I'm going to say, well, you know, cancer basically consumes more sugar and lactate than anything else. So if you can inhibit those, really important. Glutamate is the other thing that actually cancer cells use, and there are substances out there, both medicines and other things, that can also help inhibit the utilization of glutamate by cancer cells, really starving the little fuckers out of existence, and things like that. So, but there's a number of other protocols and stuff like that, depending on where you are and stuff like that. So I do really want to put that together, because it's really important. And it's, remember, not medical advice. It's basically based on the best science. And that is basically it. Now let me move on, because of well, you know, you are a nurse after all, you know. But when it comes to T1, he's like a little brat. He probably needs a nursery, locked up and chained in the corner. What's your latest Little Salad Boy has demonized eggs a while ago? You're kidding me. Oh, so he has actually already done that. I wasn't aware of that. I thought he was just attacking pork and chicken, but he's gone to the next level. Now he's attacking eggs. Fuck me. Yeah. Apparently that old geezer that was much older than Paul at 88 outlived his parent. Apparently he was doing something wrong, wasn't he? Fuck me. This is the fucking nonsense. I mean, most Asians have been consuming like every meal an egg traditionally. If you go to Asia back in my time, when before it was even developed, and now they're consuming high levels of refined shit. But back then, you ask anyone in my generation that used to go to Bali and used to get a little wrap with leaves, you'd get a bit of, you wouldn't get just a small bit of rice, small bit of veg, some meat, which would be fish or pork, fish or chicken, or combinations of it, and basically, that's the sort of thing, and an egg. They used to, fry an egg and put it on there, on top of there, and wrap it up and give you that sort of thing, or nasi goreng and all these sort of things, with eggs on them and stuff like that. So that's traditional for them to eat that, So people have been eating eggs, whether wild eggs, ostrich eggs, or whatever, for how long? Give us a break. How fucking demented can you be? Yeah, I thought he would. I didn't think he'd go to that level. I thought he would focus, but I didn't. Yeah, but then again, if he's being influenced by these repeat characters, I'm not surprised that he's doubled down and gone to eggs now. So one of the best foods, high in choline. I mean, just think of it. After, when it comes to liver and eggs, they are both very high in choline. What does choline do? It exports fat out of the liver. It's the most important thing to actually export and reduce fatty liver. I mean, you've seen one of my old videos, fatty liver, being a choline deficiency. One of my statements. I mean, how can you demonize a food that will prevent fatty deposits in your liver? God almighty, fuck me. What a cockwomble. That's what we should call him from now on. Salad cockwomble. Fuck me. Anyway, he's an idiot. If he's basically said that, he's lost a lot of respect for me. I may even basically unsubscribe. He's really lost the fucking plot. Morning, Harry. Do you think Candida can cause keratosis? Yeah. Actually, it can actually influence. Usually, the things that drive keratosis, acne, all these pilaries and all these sort of skin tags and whatever is usually high sugar, or your body generating too much sort of glucose, or being in a glycolytic type condition in that regard. I will be doing something on that, but just as a quick filler, I do have certain strains that I focus on when it comes to bacterial things, but in general, lactobacillus, of all the types of lactobacillus, will basically reduce candida. So lactobacillus in particular, I mean, there are different strains that are more potent at doing that, and that will be in my explanation protocol, plus a few other things. But in general, lactobacillus, is, fermented foods that have got lactobacillus, very good for candida, dealing with it in that regard. But yes, wait for my protocol on that. It's for this month. I'll be doing it because I did promise it this month, so it will happen. So expect something on that question and covering that point. And it will really tie all this sort of stomach issues, because that can also be an issue. If your gallbladder doesn't work properly, it's not producing enough bile to flush the small intestine properly of bacteria and fungi, fungus and all that. It should be, shouldn't have a lot of this sort of stuff in it. That most of that stuff should be in the colon. If it's not in the colon, it basically means that you're either, you're low stomach acid, you're not producing enough bile, salts. It's all this sort of stuff, and it's all tight: stomach, pancreas, the liver, gallbladder, and the small intestine. It's all really tight. SIBO, candida, all these sort of things are really tied together. We see them in this reductionist way, but in reality, they are all tied together to different degrees. One affects the other and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a multi-pronged way you have to deal with these sort of things in that, if that makes sense. So acidifying your stomach is really important. Dealing with, I would immediately basically be looking at getting taurine supplementation, choline supplementation in, making sure that, because if you've got candida, it's probably moved up into your stomach, which is actually reduce your stomach acid as well. Probably burping a bit and stuff like that is a bit of a giveaway as well. So you basically need to deal with that as well. So HCl plus these other things that can help. And this month I will have some and get some lactobacillus stuff in it, really good. That will help. So, billions of colonies of lactobacillus. And you don't have to worry because they're acid loving. So they will populate everywhere, But, you may go through transitional issues, unfortunately, with stomach issues and a bit of diarrhea and other issues. Yes, unfortunately. Die-off is a real bitch. So, yes, I've gone through something like that. Trust me, wasn't fun. Can you take a few days off from work? Make it easier for you mentally to deal with it. Yes. Anyway, let's move on. Glad to hear you are causing trouble, Dan. Oh, busy? Redirect your attention, Dan, to T1. Where is fucking T2? He's been missing in action for a while. Yeah, pretty good. Just busy on the home front, busy on the work front, busy everywhere in that regard. So, let alone we're trying to get, because one of the guys are leaving, and eventually we will have to replace that position. More training, more stuff like that. He's writing up material. I'm writing some, doing some stuff as well, and helping out with training, and never ending. So got another bit of a transition in this period. Yes, let alone the future person will be up north because of anyway, long story. In a different location, so remotely have to connect with that person. So yeah, never ending, fun and games. Regarding Cellar Boy video, would linoleic acid from animals be even beneficial instead of not harmful? Look, fatty acids are they're both beneficial and, in the wrong, let's say you glycate them with a whole lot of sugar, they can become problematic, So, it's not and or, if I take any fat or protein and glycate it heavily with a lot of, honey, well, it's going to cause advanced glycation end products. It's going to cause some oxidative stress. Even Tucker understood that, and he mentioned it. So even seed oil, when you combine it with honey or sugar in general, will make it even worse. So, but Tucker's view and many of the others who talk about PUFA, they're more focused on seed oils because that's the dominant source of linoleic acid in the diet. You know, it's not as people are basically eating shitload, 25 eggs a day, or basically consuming shitloads of pork or shitloads of, bacon or stuff like that. No, people are basically consuming shitloads of fries cooked and other foods cooked in seed oils, shitloads of foods that have got fillers, processed foods that have got full of sugar and seed oils. That's what people are really consuming. And they're overloading their system and causing massive glycation problems, which their body can't cope. It's just overwhelmed. If you were to basically, let's put it this way, had a clean diet throughout the year and had fries once, it's not good. It'll cause inflammation. It'll cause harm. But, you know, your body will probably survive that one assault. But if you're assaulting your body constantly every day, chronically assaulting it, yeah, it's going to be really bad. And generally speaking, all food, when it's oxidized, creates reactive oxygen species, no matter what. Whether it's fat, sugar, at the mitochondrial level, there is waste that is created from basically just oxidizing nutrients. There is waste. There is wear and tear on the system. It's just living. That's what living is. The question is, what creates most? Sugar will create more. Seed oils will create more. They will also do more damage to the mitochondria in terms of deuterium, damaging the nanomotors. So it's really, if you linoleic acid from a seed oil has got 255 parts per million in terms of deuterium, which is double that of sugar. So that's going to do a lot of damage. It's going to overwhelm the mitochondria, which will make it nearly impossible when it's dehydrogenating in these enzymatic pathways and into the TCA cycle. It's literally cleaving off these hydrogen. That's how it produces metabolic water. But if it finds, for instance, in these enzymatic processes, it finds basically deuterium there, it will cleave it off and replace it with hydrogen. But it can only do some swapping and depleting to a certain degree. If you overwhelm the system, it gets beyond the capacity of the mitochondria to deplete, so to speak. So the less deuterium-loaded foods you have, the better. So the lower the deuterium level, the better. But linoleic acid coming from pork is actually even lower, because most PUFA, both omega-3s and omega-6s, are actually even lower than saturated fats or monounsaturated fats in terms of deuterium. They are lower. So from the pork, this is why, because pork has slightly more of the omega-6, it actually has lower deuterium than tallow. So what's causing harm then? But then it would be a reductionist of me to basically, fragment, because all different fats have different roles. They play different structural roles. They play part of the immune system, like prostaglandins, which are important as long as they're not chronically elevated. They do play an important role in repair mechanisms by basically being incorporated in cell membranes. They actually act as repair mechanisms. So, and there is vitamin E there, and as long as that is basically electron donating and stabilizing those PUFAs in the actual membrane. And as long as you're not glycating it with honey, and as long as you're in a low carbohydrate state and you're producing enough glutathione intracellularly to basically refresh and basically electron donate back to the topopherols and to the vitamin E complexes of the different lengths and all that, chocolatrenals and the topopherols, as long as they will be able to do that, continue doing their job and get recycled. And that's why don't in low carbohydrate state, you don't need a lot. One, the receptors, the GLUT4 receptors, are very pronounced and very sensitive to vitamin C from all animal sources. But at the other end, also, the vitamin C you don't need as much because you've got glutathione there that's upregulated intracellularly that can basically recycle vitamin C as well. And that's the difference. But if you're dumping in a whole lot of sugar, well, that's going to reduce the capacity. It'll actually downregulate glutathione, first of all. And that means your requirements of vitamin C and vitamin E go up. That is why one diet is not equal to another. Very important that we make this differentiation. And so linoleic acid first of all, it's going to be lower deuterium levels, which is one important thing to keep in mind. The second thing is that it's basically stable. It's incorporated in these bilayers of the animal fat itself. And so it's not damaged or oxidized. And then when you eat it, you consume it, your body actually correctly pulls it apart and utilizes it. But if it's basically, you've gone out and you've taken that plant and then you've put it through an industrial system, you really have made it rancid and oxidized because you've exposed it to oxygen and because you've taken it out of its protective casing or structure. Now, with nuts, they're also an issue because they will degrade over time. It's not like meat. In the bilayers, it's really incorporated really well and stable. Unless you actually put it into direct sunlight and leave it out for a very long time to become rancid, it usually doesn't, not in the fridge, or with basically the old ways which they used ice, and they used both ice and salt to create these crystallines, which would actually also maintain good integrity of these fats, the way we used to keep fats in the past. And then when you cook them, yes, they will produce some oxidative byproducts, and yes, they will produce some sort of aldehydes as well. All foods do. Let's put it that way, okay? But the lowest in aldehydes, and I've actually shown that, the tear membranes and all that, is lard. Then tallow is just very close, but just slightly second. Then butter. Then you've got olive oil, and then you've got all the seed oils. So the best stuff to basically cook with is definitely tallow and lard, hands down. And if you're cooking with butter, ghee is much safer. And basically, when it comes to things like butter, keep it at a low temperature. I usually just put butter on my steak after I've cooked it, let it cool down, and it just melts. It's really nice. Gives it a nice creamy taste. So probably ranted a bit too much, but pretty much food is food. When it's oxidized, it will produce some byproducts. So you don't see it in this sort of reductionist, it's beneficial, it's harmful, it's food. It's got certain nutrients that support certain pathways, provide structural material or stuff. And if you don't have enough, if you're not getting enough vitamins or minerals or enough of this structural material, then things are not going to work properly. So don't view it in a reductionist, just this part or that part. Eat species appropriate diet and you will be healthier, believe me. If you go down the reductionist pathway, you end up into pseudoscience, because when you try to replicate that in studies, you always come, just remember the A to Z study that I showed about that veg-tarded academic Christopher Gartner. What did he do? Again, he did research and he actually showed that even inflammation markers came down when people were doing the traditional Atkins diet. And what was Atkins? It was all meat and bacon and eggs in the morning. Okay? So there's a randomized control study trial that was done over a whole year, bacon and eggs. So give us a break. That's real food and real. So now, what somebody does at home, how the fuck do I know what they do, or when they're getting their lab works done, that they are basically cleaning up their act so things will look good. I'm not accusing him of doing that, but he's got books to sell and stuff to promote, and who knows what goes through people's minds when they're, let's say, as one person said, when your income is determined on the answer, usually that's the answer you give. My income is not determined on the answer that I give. So it's going to be basically more credible, I would say. But I'll leave that to you guys to determine. Frank said he's back at eating 3 to 4 pounds of ribeye and veggies and fruits and juices. Oh, great. So basically the standard American diet of meat and sugar. Yes. And he considers that healthier. Good for him. Whatever. Crazy. Frank thinks glucose is the best. Yeah, exactly. What I said earlier, because I did mention your comment. Yes. Exactly. Those poor little rats. Yes, the real big rat is Ray Pete, believe me. Frank appears to be on a ray. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look, that's the same stuff that Christopher Walker and many others actually promote. Christopher Walker actually does promote a more lower carbohydrate version of it. He's not into, like high sugar. It's sort of, a bit of some low glycemic things, none of the green veggies, which I agree, green veggies are shit. They just damage your gut long term. So on that, with Christopher Walker, I'm in complete agreement. Christopher Walker also talks about micronutrient density, and with that, I do agree with him as well. Animal products, he agrees that animal products have got far more micronutrient density. With that, I agree. But he also agrees on a mixed diet and all that. Now, if you're doing a mixed diet of that sort and you're very physically active and stuff like that, you probably are not going to get the effects. It's a bit like, in the past, a lot of Asians that ate a bit of rice, worked their asses off for hours out in the fields and just burned off that glycogen, and so it didn't really affect them. But if you put a person, a sedentary person or an office worker on a Ray Pete diet, I can tell you'll be engaging the Randall cycle all day, and that person will be getting fat and sick over time. So, most of these guys, like we're talking about Christopher Walker and all that, are into bodybuilding and all this sort of stuff. So, but that's not what the average person out there is doing. And that's this sort of information, the thermal diet or whatever, is not going to really help those people who basically may have, let's say, leg problems and may not be able to exercise and all sorts of issues and need to be on a low carbohydrate or ketogenic diet to basically fix their problems first, their health problems, because basically in the mess that they are, they're probably not even reproductively capable, have hormonal issues anyway. And we know how to quickly fix hormones. Boron to normalize hormones. But at the same time, boron can only do so much, and you shouldn't chronically take very large amounts for long periods of time. It should come down. You should use it as a small short-term protocol. But I usually say to people, clean up other things in your first of all in your diet, and then go into the protocol, fix that, correct that, so you can shorten the amount of months that you have to do to transition. That's all. It's a hack. It's not a lifestyle. You should try and prioritize your nutrition from the food. Oops. Oh. Damn. Jumping all over the place. G'day, Christina. And remember the Fuchs, my Italian ancestors, ate somewhat high carbs during scarcity times. Yeah, look, exactly, which accounts to your point of history. Look, a lot of people in the Mediterranean can tolerate more carbohydrates. They can, it depends where they come from. Like I see with Greek islanders, less. I see with people in lowland areas that come from lowland areas more, and people that come from mountainous areas like my sort of ancestry comes, less tolerant. So it depends on some of this sort of stuff. It's a bit like the Han Chinese and choline, 76%. I mean, it's less than 10% in Europeans, but they are 76% endogenously. Why? Because their bodies were deprived for so long for certain nutrition that they don't need the animal source. They can either create it themselves or extract it from other sources because they've got some certain genetic changes and adaptation because of that severe famine level existence for a very long time on very little animal product. So their body had to adapt to some extent. So we need to understand these sort of variations. When it comes to choline, the Han Chinese are the only population in the world that have this 76%. Everybody else doesn't. They're like an outlier, a complete and utter outlier when it comes to choline. And it sort of explains why it takes a lot of visceral fat accumulation in Han Chinese before you start seeing fatty liver. So that's the thing. So a lot of consumption of sugar stuff and stuff like that before you see it. Again, because of this sort of choline supported pathway. As long as they're getting enough choline in the diet, because the endogenous stuff that they produce is minimal. But if they're getting some in their diet and they're endogenously producing some, then it takes a bit longer for them on a similar diet, like a similar Western diet, to get into that sort of state. But their biggest problem is that they still become diabetic much earlier. So even though they don't get the sort of ailments of the fatty liver type things as fast, they still become diabetic. And the reason for that is because they're TOFIs. They don't have the capacity to store enough fat. So eventually it gets them that way. It just happens all of a sudden. That's why in these populations you get this sort of dramatic, where somebody is not detectable as even pre-diabetic for a long period of time, then becomes very rapidly in a very short amount because of fat storage issues. So it's a very different pathway in which they become diabetic compared to us. So there's, as I said, there are these differences that do make a difference. Anyway, let's move on. I have never ever seen Ray Pete. I've seen Ray Pete years ago, and I realised he was a twat. But he wasn't as big as he is now. And he's hiding because he's in such a mess. But yes, back then he didn't look too bad for his age. But now he looks like absolute shit. That's why he doesn't make any appearances. Pork for dinner with bone, marrow, and pooper. Laugh out loud. Yes. Yes. We should not fear pooper in animal products. I'm not saying to people go out and guzzle pooper. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we've eaten these ancestral foods for a very long time in large amounts. I mean, this old person was getting 17.5 grams. I mean, I struggle to get 3.5 grams, way below the 4. Sometimes I only do 2.5 grams because of the meats and stuff that I eat, which are very low. But I'm not out there trying to, there will be some days that I have far more. I'll get up into the 5, 6, 7 grams when I'm having, like 12 eggs or 13 eggs or stuff like that. I throw in and make a big omelette, with my cheese, grated cheese and stuff like that. You know, I have one of those days now and then. You know, I'll probably do that once every month or whatever, where I have this really obsession with having a lot of eggs and a lot of, you know, cheese and stuff like that. Good Italian raw cheeses as well. Actually, up for one of those in the next coming, probably Monday or Tuesday. I haven't made up my mind yet. So, but that's coming from Whole Foods, so it's not going to be an issue in that regard. So, yep, enjoy yourself. Harry, sorry, I did jump a bit there. Harry, do you think someone should eat if they are mostly carnivore but not consume dairy to cover the nutrients they miss from dairy products? Look, I don't know if you're lactose intolerant or what your issue. There are low lactose cheeses. I mean, brie has got very little sugar and has got good levels of calcium, good levels of MK4, which is the vitamin K2, the best one, the animal form. You don't even have to convert it from the other menaquinones into MK4, which is the one that all the cells use. So that's an option. You know, if you don't, just buy some brie. Eat some good French brie. But there are other ways. Organ meats. There are organ meats options. There is, you know, bone broths. There's all sorts of ways of getting different nutrition if you're not into, you know, you don't have to do dairy. I do, but you don't have to. Any thoughts on heterocyclic amine? That's, you know, when you actually cook things. Anything you overcook will create them. These heterocyclic aromatic amines, anything that you cook, you know, if you cook potato too much and you burn it, you'll have them created. If you basically cook over anything that gets charred, anything that gets this sort of charring effect, will basically have both these heterocyclic aromatic amines and also advanced glycation end products. So, but that's the amount that you will get in most foods is very small, even when you overcook them. You know, the studies that they did were on rats, and they were giving them massive quantities, not small quantities, massive quantities. And there is a couple of ways you can actually, let's say you take apple cider vinegar and you actually put your meat in a bowl with apple cider vinegar and then cook it. You can reduce the levels to, you know, over 75%, even if you overcook it. So there are always options to use if that frightens you. I personally don't worry. Let me put it that way. One, I usually have my steaks rare anyway. Sometimes I have them medium rare, which I cook them a bit more. The only time actually I get a lot of these this sort of charring effect is when I do my New Yorker steaks, which is basically I pack pepper and salt on both sides and towel it in. And basically, when I do that, the peppercorns will basically be burnt and, you know, damaged, and they do have some you know, plant-based poofer in there, so that's going to be oxidized, but we're talking about minuscule. So yeah, they probably are a bit, but you know, what the fuck, you know, I like it, I enjoy it. So, but it's compared to the ones that they did with the actual, oh, good to see you there, T2. But compared to the stuff that they did with the rat studies, I mean, that was just over the top. We're talking about hundreds of, tens or hundreds of fold of amounts to get those effects. So you're not going to really get it, even if you do a spud, a potato. Not that I'm recommending potatoes. You're not going to get the level that's going to cause you harm in that way. Potato will cause you harm in other ways. Okay. So if you have too many, I mean, you can lose weight if you're not engaging the Randall cycle and you're exercising. But if you're combining it with a lot of fat, yes, it will probably make you a bit fat, but it will only create fat in the subcutaneous side of things, not in the visceral. So less dangerous in that regard. But no, I wouldn't get, this is again the reductionist sort of nonsense where people get far too wound up about these things. When they've actually done studies and they've actually looked at just regular barbecued meat, there's nothing there. I actually say to people, show me regular barbecued meat, not a rat study, and you show me those products in a human. When it comes to sort of reactive, when we look at C-reactive protein, when we look at all these inflammatory biomarkers, people are basically, look at the AWST study, people are basically doing high amounts of bacon and eggs, and you fry them, the bacon and eggs, so that's creating supposedly a lot of these sort of byproducts, plus aldehydes and everything else under the sun. So you're cooking that and you're eating that, and your C-reactive protein goes down and a whole lot of other inflammatory biomarkers. And this is from a Stanford University academic who is a vegetarian academic as well, and telling you that their inflammation biomarkers and all these other things improved as well. And they went back and looked at the data on the video that things improved. So it's not there in real life, in real humans. It's only in the imaginary world of an academic working with rats with high doses. That's where it is. And then from that, extrapolating reductionist nonsense to the rest of us, and then all the naturopaths and every other moron out there jumping on the bandwagon and really going to town on it. Give us a fucking break. Yes. But if you really want to actually create these sort of byproducts and very glycating effects, have some honey, or even better, take raw sugar and cook with it. God, that will really push those things up. That's how you actually increase heterocyclic aromatic amines and advanced glycation end products. And that's what they do nowadays, especially in Southeast Asia. God, they cook because they want to feel that they're rich, they can afford sugar, and they cook with it. That's the sort of nasty shit. Yes. Anyway, let's move on. Comments in physics video now. Oh yeah, me. Archaeology, physics. There's not a subject that I'm not interested in. Philosophy keeps on going. I've got to entertain myself somehow. Oh shit! It did jump. Okay, I have lost some people's comments. Unfortunately, sorry, I do apologise. The damn thing jumped. So that's the last one. You were asking something and it jumped. We're at the top there. So please ask again. Fruit is not your friend, definitely not. High in deuterium, the highest deuterium source is fruit, and it's poor nutrition, has nothing to value. Anyway, could you send me a study that shows that fructose causing inflammation processes? Yes, I could actually provide you with information on fructose and all that. I've actually shown it in my live streams on countless occasions. Where was that other Let me just find it. Otherwise, I'll have to refer to my previous video. Where did I? Anyway, go and check my previous live stream, and I actually showed there where it was an 8-week study, and all they did was swap out fructose for, they swapped out for one group the fructose and put in starch, and in the other one they actually basically left the fructose in or added a bit more fructose, and basically the visceral fat levels went up, and on the people that were actually consuming more glucose, because glucose is, your body will produce it if you don't take it in, and if you get too much excess, it'll actually put it into subcutaneous fat, the love handles, all the stuff around. Visceral fat accumulation and fatty droplets in the liver come from fructose or alcohol. That's what drove psoriasis in the past, and there's plenty of information on alcohol, and alcohol is metabolized in the same way as Robert Lustig has demonstrated in his studies, the same way as fructose uses the same pathways as alcohol. So it creates these same fatty droplets in the liver, and the same so if you want to go and see Robert Lustig's research on that, there's plenty of research out there to look at it in that regard. So that was, I'd recommend you go and check Robert Lustig's information out, and my last week's video where I actually showed the 8-week study of those people and how quite clearly visceral fat and liver fat went up, so organ fats. So you just have to go and take a look at that. Yes, in that regard. But I don't do research for people. I show research and I comment on research. If you've got research that actually shows something different, present it and I will comment on it. But I don't go away looking for stuff for people. This is a live stream, can't do that. It takes time. In that regard. But there are plenty of other people who have, and I did show something last week, and you can check that. But as I said, if you've got something different, present it. As I say, I'm always open to new information, but it has to be a study that actually shows, not correlation, not association. It must be proved causally that basically that something other than fructose causes this same process. Most of the studies that actually show, fats, it's the Randall cycle. And if you don't understand the Randall cycle, Bart Case actually got a good explanation on his site to basically explain the Randall cycle. That's when you combine two fuels, sugar and fat, together in high amounts, and the body basically, you will end up with a certain level of downregulation of the GLUT4 receptor and the CD36 receptor at the cell level, and that will increase the level of resistance and increase the inflammation. So there's a lot of different pathways in that regard. Of an inflammation, there is chronic inflammation and there is general inflammation. Exercise causes inflammation, fasting causes inflammation, eating causes inflammation. A lot of things, just breathing causes inflammation, taking in oxygen. Our bodies will never get to zero inflammation. That's impossible. But what they do is, if you're chronically and you're creating too much damage and the body doesn't have the capacity of repairing that damage, that's when you get into trouble. So eating one fruit a day is probably not going to cause it. But if you're consuming quite a bit of fruit, yes. If you're consuming 100 grams, like some people recommend now, like Paul and people like Frankie Boy recommending, you know, high amounts of these sort of things, I'd say no. And if they were recommending 100 grams of things like, you know, for somebody who's physically active and all that, of rice, I'd say, yeah, look, it's a source, but it's not optimal. You don't need it, but it's not going to basically kill you. But when you basically say have 100 grams of fruit, which is basically 7 times more glycating than glucose, no, it doesn't make sense to me, you know. And then the deuterium side, you know, it's much higher in deuterium. Like a lot of glucose things can be around the 150 mark, 140, 48, 47 mark. But, you know, most fruit is around the 155 mark, which is the same level as water. But today's water, in the past, when there was less carbon in our water, it was much lower, the parts per million, in that regard. So that affects the concentration of deuterium as well. You know? So basically, yeah, there's plenty of information out there. But I would basically, if you really want, Google Robert Lustig and look at his research. It's really top-notch research because it's actually done in humans, not in rats. And that's important, you know, that you look at human studies and not rat studies. Our physiology is not the same. You know, rats can consume quite a lot of grains. They get into grain silos, you know, but they don't, you know, the only time a rat will actually get, you know, is, see, we can actually consume too much grain and convert part of that to fructose, excess. A rat won't have that problem. That's what's very hard to get a rat into ketosis as well. It takes like, you've got to slightly over 100%, 90% fat to get them into ketosis. It's nearly so hard. Their physiology is completely different to us. We can't compare one with the other when it comes to nutrition. So, you know, for toxicity, that's a different thing. You know, all mammals exhibit similar things. If you give them a radioactive substance, it will cause them damage in a similar way nearly, you know. We're mammals, you know, we can only endure so many toxins. There may be some variations between mammals in their detoxification pathways, but in general, you know, one toxin that affects one rat or a human or a cat or a dog, you know, and that's why they use animal experiments to basically make sure that something isn't toxic to humans, you know. So, but yeah, don't extrapolate things from animals, because there are differences in their nutritional requirements or their transcription factors. I mean, first of all, they produce vitamin C endogenously. We don't. We use uric acid. We use completely different ways of actually, for, you know, when it comes to our antioxidant system. Ours is designed for these intracellular superoxide dismutase, glutathione, all these things, which sugar does downregulate. So that should tell you something. Anyway, let's move on. But if you like, you know, it's your body. You can do whatever you like with it. Yep. Comments. Oh, God. I wouldn't be surprised. Horrifying even thinking about it. Yep, exactly. Thanks, Joel. There you go. You've even got the name to basically Google. And he'll explain the entire pathways, the biochemistry, exactly how all these different pathways, which, you know, because I can just say it, but it's seeing it visually and seeing all the pathways, how they work, really basically it's, you know, makes it clear. So since somebody else has done it academically, why replicate? My closest friend is in the hospital suffering from the worst flare-up of kidney stones. His life, further complications. Said he might actually go carnivore after this. Yeah, get him on citric acid as well. Tell him to take some citric acid. And if he doesn't have any supplemental citric acid, like food-grade citric acid, then consider lemon juice. So that's a short-term thing that will also help because, so you got to try anything you can, to try and reduce those damn stones. Look, I've gone through that by eating a whole lot of green veggies, and yes, I ended up with a lot of kidney stones. 5 years. Well, technically there was a fourth attack, but I did basically manage it differently with a lot of citric acid, and I avoided. I had a bit of pain, and I get kidney pain. It must be some oxalate dumping and all that, because I was getting some really foamy stuff in my, and I just went really hard on citric acid and cleared it all out, and I didn't have to worry. But the previous 3 times before that, I ended up in hospital. Once they were able to flush it out, and twice surgically they had to remove it. Once because it was like a hook, so that it wasn't coming out, believe me. And the other one, it had this oblong or funny sort of shape, and it just wouldn't come out. It got into between the bladder and the actual kidney in that little tube in between. It was actually moving up and down, and you can imagine the pain. And you can imagine me screaming out for morphine. Yes. I was like a pussy. Oh. God, tell you what, kidney stones really, they are a leveler. There's one lady that was in there, she actually said to me, I've gone through pregnancy. Kidney stones are the worst. They go, okay, so I'm having a double pregnancy, I said to her. She laughed. We had to be humorous with each other somehow. Yep, we all do. Yep, hopefully. It's good. Hi, Harry. MSN just immediately and completely cured my extreme oxalate sensitivity. Had been covered for 2 years and couldn't even put black pepper on my steak. Yep, exactly. Well, the thing is with oxalate, it depletes sulfur heavily. And the problem is, yes, you can have some steak, you get some sulfur amino acids, you can have basically things like eggs, which have got a high in sulfur, but that's if you got no problems. If you've got no problems, yeah, you can do steak and eggs and stuff like that, not an issue. Supplements are there for specific reasons to deal with problems, and when you have you've had a lot of oxalate, like I've gone through that hell as well, believe me. That was fun. It does deplete a lot of your sulfur in your body. So it could be another factor that, because sulfonation of the glycocalyx, those little hairline structures on your arteries, your endothelial cells, your arteries, they also keep things away from the surface, but they need to be sulfonated to maintain that negative charge. Also to produce nitric oxide as well, you need sulfur. So, and that's a vasodilator, it reduces blood pressure and stuff like that. So I would say that, potentially oxalates is another pathway, which is basically depleting sulfur and actually allowing for much easier injury of your endothelial cells, of your, So I would say sulfur has a purpose in dealing with it. So I'm glad you've actually seen results, Henry. Good to hear. Yep, that's good. Keep up, a bit of maybe citric as well, just to basically, because you may have little fine things, and sometimes they can get trapped in the kidneys. Even though they may not cause any pain, they may actually impede the efficiency of your kidney function. So it's a good thing to throw a bit of citric acid there as well, just to basically, help it really clean up all the ducts, because you remember the filtration system in your kidneys is filtering, recycling sodium, recycling uric acid, and also basically filtering the blood and all these things right through there. So you don't want any of these oxalates sort of binding to the calcium that's coming through and basically, getting themselves stuck in there and causing inefficiency in the renal function, the kidney function. I mean, stop using medical terms, Harry. And yes, so thanks. Stabilize a few. Yep, good. That sounds good. Yeah, get him on some citric acid and some sulfur. Yeah. They're probably eggs. Eggs would probably be a good source of sulfur for him. Liver is another good source of sulfur, or generally organ meats, but liver would have higher amounts. Yeah, there are. Yeah, that's the sort of stuff that I can think. If you're thinking about plants, then it's basically things like garlic, and which I sort of don't recommend, but anyway, but garlic and onions tend to be the highest sort of forms of sulfur in that part of the in the plant-based things, but they have also other compounds that are problematic. But maybe as a short-term solution, if he doesn't have access to a supplement and he can't afford a supplement, I don't know what his finances are. It's sort of the sort of poor man's solution. Anyway, let's move on. The lady that I worked with just found out that her hubby had pancreatic cancer. He went low carb, lost 50 pounds too. Such a shame. Well, once I do that, because I will be doing it this week, that cancer one, pass it on. Yeah, look, most cancers take a number of years to actually, they don't happen overnight. They take multiple decades. It's even on statins that actually cause a lot of problems. Even the LA veteran study, it only started showing cancer increasing after 7 years. So it takes a long time. And that's from a known mitochondrial toxin, which is what it is. I forgot my coffee. Enjoyable. Luckily I can drink cold coffee and it doesn't annoy me. Sorry about that. Should have put a video on or something. Yep, exactly. We do. Good. That's a good thing. It hasn't metastasized yet, which is good. Actually, if something hasn't metastasized and hasn't spread, fasting also helps. Fasting can actually help the cancer if it spreads. But if it hasn't spread, fasting can also limit its growth. So it's something you do at the early stage before metastasis. Once metastasis happens, you don't want to be fasting, because autophagy actually gets hijacked by cancer at the metastatic stage, unfortunately. And if this poor person is also doing chemo and all the other chemical stuff, he's going to be destroying his immune system. He's going to be destroying his capacity to survive. If he's keto, he will basically, keto is quite protective against chemotherapy and some of these interventions and radiation. It's not perfect, but it's better than being on a sugar diet. Let's put it that way. While you're going through this, you get less damage. But if people have got no options and they're scared and all that, you know, they're not going to listen to me. They're going to listen to their oncologist, you know, so that's shit happens. I just hope when I do the video this week that he'll look at it and may, you know, maybe show an interest. I don't know, you know, who knows. Plus her mother has dementia and isn't doing well either. They gave her 6 months to live. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, to break all that beta amyloid is going to take a number of years. She'd have to have a clean diet. She'd have to supplement taurine, and I'd be putting her on 5 grams of taurine every friggin' day to break down the beta amyloid, and that would take a while. Because one great thing about taurine, I used it to reverse the scarring in my heart, because it breaks down this sort of fibrotic, this sort of scarring thing. And it's the same thing, but it takes a number of years. You're not going to see immediate results. They gave her 6 months to live. You know, but you never know. So the body has great survival. You give it the good nutrition, and it may outlive the 6 month. You know, doctors aren't gods. They don't know. That's based on an average, which they've worked out from people that are really sick, really badly, and usually their averages based on statistics. It's like the RDIs are based on the average, and each time people are they have lower nutrition, the average goes down. You know, so they say, when does these people get really sick? If we basically don't have 100% of the population getting sick, we can lower the average, because it means people can just barely make it with a lower average. That's the problem with these averages. You know, they don't really tell you much. It's statistical mumbo jumbo, basically. G'day, Fapnado. Good to see you, mate. Yes, he's here. He's here. Lurking around, which is good to see. What's he saying? Pepper does inhibit cytochrome P450, which is in the liver, the detoxification one. I see that he actually said, but the thing is, like poison, the dose is the poison, but told me pepper on food is extremely insignificant health-wise. Exactly. Yep, it is, basically. Look, everything inhibits something or affects something or whatever. I mean, head shock proteins can be affected by mTOR. But I can tell you there are plenty of bodybuilders that actually, right after their exercise, hit shitloads of protein and get a lot of muscle protein synthesis from high mTOR, and they don't get the breakdown in protein that people predict by lowering heat shock proteins. In particular, I've been looking on one and its manipulation between mTOR1 and mTOR2. Very interesting sort of play on that. But again, it's reductionist, and people play on this reductionism. And I go, when I look at the pathway, I can see that, you know, it's really, yeah, they're playing with stuff and really just trying to force this to make a point. Oh, look what we found. Oh, I can publish this. I'm like, fuck off, is my opinion on that sort of quality of science. Anyway, it's research. It's not science. It's poor research in many cases. Yes, there is certain factors between mTOR and heat shock proteins, but people are over-exaggerating some of the stuff just because they're pushing something or whatever. They put soybean oil in everything. Basically, good stuff, mate. Good stuff. It's cheap and fucking nasty, John. And that's why they put it everywhere, because they can make a good profit, good money on it. It's basically it. If it wasn't for that, yes. And that's why they put it in everything, unfortunately. Thoughts on the terrain versus germ theory for Candida. I have discussed this before about German. I don't believe in either theory is correct, because for a germ or for a virus, when it comes to, for a virus to get, for a germ, it's a bit different. Bacteria, in some regards, there is a certain level of homeostasis. Terrain theory probably applies much better with, for most bacteria. There are some exceptions, like the bubonic plague and many other things, okay? But the majority of bacteria that we've got in ourselves are in a sort of a terrain, sort of, they actually, you know, if you don't eat appropriately, you can get them out of whack. So it has some validity. As I said, you can string a lot of things together, but in general, you know, there are circumstances where the terrain theory applies, where the germ theory applies, bubonic plague, HIV, Ebola, you know, name your lethal killer out there, you know, and there are viruses that are completely won't affect you at all. We've got millions of viruses in us. They absolutely just, our immune system keeps them down. They transmit to another animal or whatever. But as long as they can't replicate, they don't really stay in any concentration in our body. Why? We touch a dog, it can't use one of our receptors. It can't get in our cells. It can't replicate. Nothing's going to happen. That's not because of the terrain theory. It's not because I'm eating properly. I could be eating an absolute shit diet. Nothing's going to happen because it can't exploit a receptor. But if it's Ebola and it can exploit a receptor, or you know, the current one, you know, C19, well, it will use that receptor and it will get in. And obviously, if you're got comorbidities and all stuff like that, it can probably do more harm, you know, otherwise. But that doesn't, you know, support the terrain theory. It just means that those sort of circumstances it may apply. But the reality is not everything applies in the same way. But again, that all germs are, you know, nasty and basically that's just bullshit as well, because it can't, if it doesn't have a receptor, it can't exploit it. But the pathogenicity of a virus is going to be different depending on its origins. So it doesn't matter how good a terrain you've got. There were many North American plain Indians that died from a lot of the diseases that they'd never seen before. The great terrain that they had didn't help them. But less of them died because they had more robust and stronger bodies. But that doesn't support the terrain theory. It just means that they had greater survival capacity, where the people who are agriculturalists around the coastal areas, a lot of them died out up to 90% because they had both weaker bodies and no immunity. So it's complicated in that regard. But when it comes to terrain, I would say neither really applies in that in that sense. It really has to do with both a dietary side and your systems. So, you know, because remember, Candida is not a problem in the colon where all this so-called terrain exists. It's really in the small intestine, the stomach, this sort of area, the esophagus and all that. And what's happening here? Well, you know, are you acidifying your stomach sufficiently? Do you have a gallbladder issue? Do you have a pancreatitis issue? Are you producing enough bile to clean out both the SIBO related or bacteria, or the candida that's actually taken resident in your stomach, or in your all the bacteria like H. pylori in those sort of areas? So it's really lifestyle that's driving candida than anything else, because people who in the past ate glucose like, you know, steak and potatoes, and nobody had candida then in that regard. It's really when we went low fat and we actually reduced the capacity for the stomach to acidify enough, because animal protein actually reduces the pH, and so does salt. We reduced salt and animal protein, and we reduced and we increased the pH of the stomach, so it became less acidic, allowing for things like Candida, H. pylori and all that to take resident and grow. And since, we weren't using our gallbladder as much, and we weren't putting through that sufficient, flushing it through with sufficient bile salts and emulsifying those that cholesterol type material, what it did was, without emulsification to break it down, it solidifies, creates sludge, creates stones, and then reduces the flow of the bile. And if bile actually loses its flow, what happens is it basically ends up not being able to cleanse the small intestine. That was part of the video. I'm nearly giving it away, but basically, in that regard, that's the introduction anyway. Well, you can hear another introduction. I'll make it more colourful next time. Meaning getting your terrain, blood plasma electrolytes better is more important than using disinfectants to kill Candida. No, that's nonsense. Once it's actually established itself, really, you try with those methods, it's not going to work, mate. Not going to work. Many other people do all these sort of things and they can't get rid of Candida because it doesn't bloody work. And I go to people, show me a study where these things have worked. They can't show me not even one. The reality is you fix your stomach, you fix your gallbladder, and the rest flows from there. Highly acidic stomach and good bile flow will cleanse those areas from Candida and basically put it back to where it needs to be in a sort of in its state, much less prevalent. You still need a bit of Candida, don't get me wrong. Yeast and bacteria play a roles in our bodies. It's when they go out of control and they're excessive, in that regard. And it could be from, multiple situations. I mean, the best way of actually increasing Candida and creating Candida situation is basically taking shitloads of antibiotics continuously. You should only be taking antibiotics when you need them. Problem is people are taking antibiotics far too often. And a lot of foods are loaded up with antibiotics, plus glyphosate is a well-known antibiotic as well. And I don't need to prove that. There's a patent. Go to the US Patent Office and glyphosate is patented as an antibiotic. Yes, it was patented as an antibiotic. So it's quite clear what is actually causing these problems. Look, the terrain theory and the germ theory are very simplistic explanations of the way the body works. Body's a far more complicated thing. It's another reductionist approach. That's why I reject both theories, because they're reductionist nonsense. The body, it's again like the stuff that Bart talks about, the muscles. Again, these little cogs. This reductionist approach. Again, the same notion, same problem. It's a system where a whole lot of processes and a whole lot of biological things and interacting with both the environment, food, everything around you. It's a complex interacting system where certain things can get a foothold, whether you have good nutrition or not. Other things cannot, because good nutrition can impede their ability to progress. For instance, if you've got good vitamin D and good zinc levels and you've got good mucosal protection barriers in there, you're going to get less sick. So it's not the terrain that's actually protecting you, like a bacterial balance or whatever terrain. It's just basically you've taken certain micronutrients that have improved those barriers to prevent the stuff from getting in the first place. So yes, as I said, way more interesting and complicated when you view it like that. That will be in the video. You'll have to wait for that. Can't give you everything. It is coming. Yes. Dude, it's freaking soybeans. Yes, exactly. Too much is out there. Too much is being used. I'm going to fly through this. Usually most people that have got MS have also got leaky gut, and they are quite sensitive to eggs, dairy, quite a few things, gluten in particular. Yeah, they got major issues, and usually they're very low in B vitamins, depleted in key minerals and B vitamins in particular. Yes, I mean, organ meats are really good for people with MS. And if you take a look at anybody that's actually looked at the area or reversed the ailments, it's usually the B vitamins are playing a big role, you know, particular B12. So riboflavin, very high in dairy. Dairy is very high in riboflavin. But if you've got leaky gut, you've got these issues, these people have, you sort of have to start slow with a sort of a meat-based organ meats and stuff like that, and then transition later to these sort of things in that regard. So, but Terry Walls, who's a medical doctor that basically reversed her MS, multiple sclerosis, she basically consumed a lot of organ meats or nutrient-dense foods that were very high in the fat-soluble vitamins, in these B vitamins, you know. So that's the sort of stuff you really want to get in your body. But you need that extra protein, because what's your gut made of? Your gut is actually made of collagen proteins. And so you need to put that sort of stuff in there to rebuild, you know, that, your gut. And basically you need to eat fats as well, which is saturated and monounsaturated fats that actually increase the DAO. That also things which is the ability to create that, but also a lot of the actual animal foods actually build this big mucosal layer, these boundaries and protection. Vitamin D is really important for that as well. You know, vitamin D is really, really important when it comes to these barriers, these mucosal barriers around the body. So zinc plays a role, but vitamin D is a big player. So I usually ask people that have got things like the MS or whatever, I usually say, what's your vitamin D status? And if you've got an autoimmune disease of any sort, why aren't you on 40,000 IUs of vitamin D3 every fucking day? And balancing that out with retinol from cod liver oil, good quality, like the Rosita one, plus MK4. Why aren't you doing that? That's what really I would have people on much higher doses of vitamin D. Really important for all autoimmune diseases to have good vitamin D status, or get out in the sun, please. Always trying to get into trouble. Yes. Those Kiwis, they always are, believe me. Oh, fuck. Stop going up and down. Get out of what? Oh, trouble. Yep. You will flow through this. Yeah. YouTube doesn't actually, I've actually got a Euro live stream tonight as well. And in the last couple of weeks, I've complained to YouTube. They're not actually presenting anything that I put through Streamlab currently. Since they changed the site, they've actually changed the internal workings of the actual site now. They don't have the 2-page thing, they've got the single page thing, and they've changed everything now. And unless you've got a premiere, if you put a live stream that's coming from an external source, it doesn't even get promoted. They are real arseholes about it. They're giving me the absolute shits because nobody knows until the last moment. Whoever gets notification, it's not helping me or many other people, I suspect as well. I think they're trying to promote their own live stream system that that'd be typical of them. Screw everyone else, you know. Yes. Yes, pretty much. Not sure what sort of things. How pornographic was it? Flapnado. I know you too well, mate. McDonald's used to cook their fries in tallow. Yes, they did, exactly. And the nice thing about animal fats, it does slow down, the uptake of glucose. So, and people were more physically active there in those days as well. An office worker eating the same food is not going to basically end up with the same sort of, they will engage the Randall cycle because they will not, deplete much glycogen like somebody who's out laboring or building, a builder or carpenter or stuff, people like that. Those people, yes, they used to consume, like in Asia, a bit of rice and all that. Not a big issue, but nowadays you'll still engage the Randall cycle. It'll be less of which you're growing subcutaneous fat, which is less dangerous, as long as it doesn't get too big. But when it comes to those days, they were much way healthier, less glycating, and less deuterium, everything. But also lifestyle was a bit different as well. So we need to take that into consideration as well. Very important. So pecking and all sorts of things. Tell you one language isn't English. It's Westy troll, lingo. Trying to upset him to see if he'll troll me. He's been quite quiet, I mean, the only last comment was there was a comment recently by T2 on Bart's latest video. Go and see it, and he basically goes, oh, be careful, Harry doesn't jump out of the bushes, as if I'm some sort of flasher. Dirty mind that bird has. And I actually put a comment myself down there about, Bart being an old boy to pick up his pace and all that. I would have jumped out to tell him to pick up his pace. Bart came back and said, I'm just now getting back I'm unfit. I'm going, okay, mate. I mean, you see me steamrolling and talking, going up a hill, up a mountain, not, just walking up steps. I usually jog up steps, like at work, up nine floors. But, as I said to him, look, 10 years ago, I was 20 kilos heavy and I couldn't actually even walk up one flight of stairs. That's how bad I was. Yes, absolutely. But we have fun with each other. I thought he'd basically turn up on my live stream just to troll me like he did last time and me to throw a few insults his way, but it didn't happen. Anyway, what are friends for, But they talk about overloaded omega-6 in the mito will oxidize. What about oxidation of 6 in the pig? Asked the pig, what do you think, pig? The pig said, I have no fucking idea. Don't worry about it. It's the old story. Now, obviously, I can't remember who told me that they were feeding pigs like seed oil out of like from takeaway joints. They were supplementing, they were throwing seed oils into their food and mixing it up and feeding to the pigs somewhere in New South Wales. So I'm going, some people, what they will do for the profit. You know, obviously those pigs would be as sick as the people eating out of McDonald's, so to speak. You know, so yeah, exactly. So you've got to know your source, and you know, that's why I stick to good sources. Now, for all my North American crowd, Kitty did ask me where to find, because I'm actually going to investigate some of the Australian exporters that make really good stuff. And I did put a comment in my last video, but also there's another thing that to consider, which is there is a Western A price. Let me just bloody find it, because I've actually posted it. I've posted it on this actual video of mine. And, oh, it actually came up for me. There's me talking to myself. Okay. And it's the pinned comment. And this is the Western A price for the US crowd. And I can get rid of that. And let me just share this screen. There's me. Turn that off for a sec. And so that is the URL. So it's just, they basically cover all the farm foods, these different organizations. They've even got phone numbers there, so you can actually call them. And they've, you know, different, I mean, this one, where was it? It's lamb, raw milk. Was it the one up here? It had, oh yeah, this one, pasture-raised, grass-fed, hormone and antibiotic-free poultry and eggs, lamb, pork and beef. So that one's in so location Northern Virginia and DC. So gardenmountain.com. So I mean, you've got Garland Farms as well. Remember, people you know, down in the Texas way and stuff like that. But there are a whole lot of other companies. There's also community agricultural these networks as well. You can call them. There's the farmers markets. There's farmers markets around the place. There's stores that are linked up with farmers for different products, which is really important. And also there are medical practitioners, which are going to be low carb, you know, keto, and people that are basically a bit more switched on compared to some of the other people, dentists, you know, so medical practitioners as well in there, you know, doing all sorts of, even people doing veterinary service that are into advocates of raw meat diets and will work with you on minimal vaccinations and stuff like that for the animals and stuff like that, and whatever is required. So they work with dietary approaches and stuff like that. So I hope that really helps people, because a lot of people may have not been aware that this actual, it's like it's not actually very self-explanatory on this side. It's not, somebody else brought it to my attention. I wasn't aware of it. This lady, she doesn't like leaving comments. Her name is Tanya, but I won't give you the surname. Thank you, Tanya. And she's from the US, and she emailed me to give me this information. So she gave me the information of the two. And if you go to Kitty's comments that I left, there was two companies there, but I won't actually that are bookmarked that I've actually commented there. And also she mentioned about Western A Prospects. She didn't give me the link, but I did a bit of a search and was able to find it. And so that, I hope, helps my North American friends to basically find the information and get better sourcing. I saw that too. Hand in your smartphone, you bigots. You know where you can stick your smartphone? The sun doesn't shine there at all. I couldn't help myself. Sorry, T1. I had to say something. Walk harder. Oh, God. Sounds like somebody with woke feelings would say. T2. I'm going to troll them a bit. They need a bit of trolling. Okay. Cook that air fryer, yogurt maker. Oh, sounds good. All in one. God. Now that's a ninja food machine. Can't beat a barbecue. Yeah, I know. Love barbecues. Yes. Beautiful steaks yesterday. Plus, we had some. Oh God, what were they? Duck. Yeah, they were sausages made of duck. And what was inside? There was some. I think there was a bit of fennel. I can't remember all the herbs now, but it had really big, nice, chunky bits of fat in there. Oh, that was nice. Really nice. Really enjoyed those. Yes. Anyway, move on. I'm thinking with my stomach. Get your mind out of the food, Harry. See, it's your fault, Fapnado. You're basically making my stomach think of food. Okay. It's good to hear. Yep. So there you go. So Easy Carnivore can provide you guys with details if you need them. Nothing much. Yes, he's sort of slopping a bit of sugar on his food, engaging the Randall cycle, glycating things, the regular sort of stuff that most people do in their post-carnivore existence or post-mental breakdown or whatever you want to call it. Not a problem. You're welcome. I've got no idea what he is or what he isn't. I don't really care. I don't even subscribe anymore to him. So you guys probably do for just to basically for the gossip. Good for you. At least I'll get some of the gossip back. No. He's actually he promotes the thermal diet. Yeah. Walker. That's it. He promotes the thermal diet. He's what I would classify as a repeat light. He's not a full-blown repeat. He's a sort of a repeat light in that regard. Yeah. If you could call him that, anyway. But he's actually recently, even though he's been promoting, sugar in his thermal diet, he's actually lowered that now to a sort of you don't need as much, much lower. He seems to be, I don't know whether he's sort of moving towards low carb or whatever. His message is a bit confusing. I don't know really what he, but he's probably finding that his people are there's feedback from his people. They're not getting the results they want. And so he's lowering the carbs, obviously, to get better results. But he's got a lot of products and a lot of supplements that he sells as well. So, he needs to keep the clientele happy to keep those sales going. So I suspect that's why his change of approach or character on the issue. Yes, when money is involved, as I said earlier, people will say whatever they think will cover that. Oh, that's a bit hard. It could be a cockwomble, colourful, cute cockwomble. Goodreads talks about omega-6 in cell oxidation. So if you overload pigs with, look, a lot of people do. I just ignore them. Unless you're guzzling down seed oils, yeah, then it's a problem. The body will take in the natural forms that it knows what things are. It works out to balance, excrete things that it does. It can actually excrete even fats and amino acids and all sorts of things that it doesn't require. It's usually when you've got processed stuff that doesn't bind properly that ends up getting in, leaking into the system. You know, that's where a lot of these problems happen. And certain stuff that's overloaded and damaged and incorporates in very obscure or dangerous ways. Yes, and has a more stickiness to it as well. Most things have ionic bonds, like minerals and other things that are coming in naturally. When you take a supplement, the ionic bonds or the bonds, the chemical bonds that are actually exist are not the same and usually react very differently in the body. So I'm giving you that as an example to sort of explain that our body transcripts proteins, specific proteins. We're not talking about enzymes here, but specific proteins to carry in minerals and a whole lot of things. You know, these things just don't magically appear in chylomicrons. They get transported. There are transport pathways to get to the other side of the actual gut wall and get into the chylomicrons in those lipid rafts and move around the body and go into cells and move stuff. So it's way more complicated in that regard. I'm just giving it in a very simplistic way to explain. So if it's damaged, it will create lipid peroxidation inside those lipids. Usually it's usually the ones that are like the VLDL and out because they have longer resident time. But even in chylomicrons, normally they have 10 minutes resident time until they get to the liver. But they can have up to 6 hours if you're insulin resistant, which means that you can end up with even chylomicrons being damaged. So it's all depends on those. Are you engaging the Randall cycle? Are you impeding the uptake? What is your ApoE? Many factors that are playing. These people like to use reductionist nonsense because they promote something. But most of these omega-6s are coming from, they are seed oil derived. So, eat seed oils. It's not going to be a good future for you. Don't eat seed oils, not an issue. We've been eating piglets and all these sort of birds and all sorts of things and eggs and stuff like that for millions of years. Not an issue. So don't worry yourself about it. If it's something that's come out of a factory, don't put it in your body. Simple as that. It will harm you. Oh, well, Frank's hamster's here. Mate, good to see you. Oh, the cute hamster. T1. Give it a bit of a Buren steak. Food of champions. Yeah, that'd be typical of you. Fucking alcoholics from the West. Carnivore died and the community rejected him. Now he's fighting back. Oh, well. Is he? I'm just ignoring him. Who gives a fuck fighting back against who? Salad Boy? God almighty. They're nearly in the same camp. Next step, veganism. Who knows? Oh, well, remember he did say once he'd go vegan if he could actually land a few vegan cuties. Remember that? So, yeah, maybe that is the next step. Freaking hell. Complete lack of scientific basis for, let's try something else. I don't like this outfit today. I'm going to just swap it for something else. I'll put a dress on. Anyway, before I get caned by YouTube, I better not say any more. Move on, Harry. Yes. Yes. You know what that soy will do to him? Turn him into a soy boy. That's what I meant to say. Couldn't help myself, sorry. Had to be said. Yes. Yes, that Danny. Yep, see you, mate. And oops. Overshot. Where am I? There I am. And there's Kitty. Only fear pigs fed Skittles, broken crackers, and full packaged Oreo cookies where the pigs eat some of the plastic too. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. Yes, xenoestrogens. Yes, perfect for pigs. Yes. Oh, look, some people are feeding seed oils to them as well. They're putting it in their food mix. It's just crazy. That's why, yes, you have to work out your sourcing. I did pin. I sent you that information about the Western A stuff. I hope you found that useful. At least, you know, if you can source some stuff and all that. I'll check some of the companies here. They're very small, sort of the family sort of entities. They are down as companies. It's not because they are not family businesses. In Australia, in order to protect, you have to set up a family trust, which is basically has like a company structure, in order to basically be able to keep it within the family and transfer it much easier to like a beneficiary or descendant in a sense. So there are legal reasons why they set themselves up like that, but they're still family farms in that regard. So yes, poor piggy. Yes, exactly, Shell. Ancient hominoids hunt piggies. Yes, exactly, precisely. And so do also chimps in the wild. They also hunt piglets as well. Yes, it's the ones that they actually, you know, where with pigs, the piglets, they usually will take them up into the canopy and drop them and use gravity to kill them. With chimps, with smaller, they usually grab them and rip them if they can. If they can't, then they throw them, you know, or they can throw them sometimes against a tree trunk or do all sorts of things. But they use different methods, but, you know, it all works, whether they're using gravity or ripping, you know, a smaller animal to bits or whatever. They all use different techniques, but they do actually consume small piglets as well. So, and, you know, our common ancestor would have done the same thing. So it defies logic. Absolutely defies logic. Exactly. Correct, Lookie. Is that because you're missing out on your piggy? Oh, we missed you as well. Where the fuck are you? Hiding in the canopies. Good, mate. Good to see you here. Birdie, you know, cheeky bastard, isn't he? Fucking hell. Hi, Birdie. Oh, cheeky little frog. He likes doing a lot of pecking. Don't excite him too much. Yes, you need to catch up. That's true. That's true. You'd be missing out. Oh, shit. Oh, for fuck's sake. Damn. StreamYard. Sorry. Moved again. That's it. Yes, exactly. Excellent buzz, smart buzz. Nice one. Is it? You're welcome. That's a compliment. Yes. You can use lemon juice as well if you know, it doesn't do as good a job, but it can as well. Even after putting a bit on can actually also, I usually put lemon juice after, can also reduce slightly as well. So, but it's better to put it before than after. So, well, that's what the research shows. I mean, you know. But it's varied, actually. I mean, I should actually say this. I should temper this. When we look, there is varied levels. So is it because of the different barbecue equipment? Is it because the way, you know, the time, the way, the angle, how much heat direct it's getting? I usually recommend that people use a plate rather than, you know, like a barbecue that's actually where the fire's coming through, but just use a plate. Unless you're making it like rare, like blue. If you're making a steak blue, that's fine. You know, bang, couple of seconds on one side, a couple of seconds on the other side, that's fine if there's a bit of flame coming through. But if you're keeping it on there for a bit of time, keep it on a plate rather than being flamed, because it does increase the glycating effects. I know that there are people out there in restaurants that, you know, they will use like a flame, like an actual flame to caramelize the actual fats and all that. Yeah, that's a bit too much. That will definitely increase AGEs, you know. Whatever you put on them, whether you marinate them or whatever. So I've seen that being done in fancy restaurants. Not something that I would recommend. But not that once, if you do it once, it's going to kill you. You know, we're talking about you have to do this prolonged multiple times, chronically, like people do with a chronic currant, sugar, and seed oil diets. You know, you'll survive one instance if you want to enjoy something like that. I have tried that as well, and I can tell you it is quite nice and crackly and all that, even though I know it's not good for me. Anyway, so Frank has been saying that our gut bacteria can only use carbs, not fat or protein. What? Absolute fucking nonsense. Absolute fucking nonsense. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's completely an idiot. Paul Mason actually did a video, if you remember. We've referred to it multiple times, me, Bart, Pim, and many others, and actually showed that when you basically, that from protein and fat, you can actually get more short-chain fatty acid, in particular things like isobutyrate and many other important short-chain fatty acids that you don't get. And what you get when you actually consume a lot of carbs, you get more acetone. And what does that short-chain fatty acid does? That can actually be turned back into glucose. And your colonocytes, need to stop using scientific terms, but the cells in your gut, they need two things, either short chain fatty acids or ketones, which are very similar. So he's talking shit. What do you think most people that are on high carbohydrate, low fat diets all have got diverticulitis and a whole lot of gut issues and damage to their gut and having their guts removed? Because the carbs are helping them or helping their beneficial bacteria? What a load of crap. You know, absolute crap. We know that from the study that Paul Mason showed that people that consume more green stuff, which actually, because remember, sugar and, you know, like refined sugar, starch and all that, very little of that ferments in the gut. That's in the small intestine and it gets absorbed rapidly into the bloodstream, you know, through the portal vein, straight to the liver and out to be exported. So he's talking shit. The stuff that gets in your colon is basically where most of the bacteria should be, because otherwise you'll have SIBO, is basically in, you know, your colon, and there it's basically some proteins, some fats, or fiber, pretty much. And if you have too much fiber, you will damage your gut lining, especially if it's raw, because it has like little hooks that will tear your gut lining over time. That's why most people that do a lot of carbohydrates tend to have more problems with their colon or have it even removed in some cases. So yeah, good luck to him. He's got no fucking idea what he's talking about. Twat. If he makes that sort of, yeah, he basically is. If he's making those sort of claims when there's good research to show the complete opposite. So yeah, fuck, you know. Maybe he's dating a vegan bird. Anyway. Basically, yeah. And the sycophants that follow him. Thankfully, my friend loves lemon juice. Good. I'll get him to consider. Yeah, that's if you can. You know, the problem is trying to find a supplement. Look, there are some pharmacies that do provide pure. It has to be food grade, citric acid in that regard. So, but lemon juice is just as good for that purpose in that regard. And even apple cider vinegar can sort of, but the problem with apple cider vinegar that I find, why I don't recommend people consume too much apple cider vinegar, the issue is that it's not good for the enamel of teeth, the teeth enamel. You know, I see people basically spooning it down or drinking it. You know, not good for your teeth, guys. That's the problem with apple cider vinegar or even citric acid, you know, from lemon juice and stuff like that, you know. But in this case, it's something that he needs. You know, his enamel is not going to basically suffer for a couple of days with a bit of citric acid from a juice, okay? It's a long-term thing if you're doing it continuously. But obviously, if you can get a supplemental citric acid that he can basically, you know, take, even better. But the question is getting it, you know. Not all pharmacies have that sort of stuff. It's not a thing that people actually go to pharmacies for. And it's usually supplement companies that are online that nowadays primarily sell that sort of stuff. So, yeah, pretty much. Look, he was pretty good in the past with a lot of stuff. He's just lost the plot. He's gone into pseudo crack pottery and all that. You know, like some of the stuff that I've debunked in terms of heat shock proteins and a whole lot of other things, oxidative stress and all these other things about 5G and 4G and stuff like that. He still arcs up all about that. The whole purpose of electromagnetics, all the electromagnetics, that's even in your wiring in your house. You know, the wires, the power that gives power to my laptop here that works, and the laptops or the computers that you guys or phones that are using, that power that goes through the actual walls as well creates electromagnetic fields. What do you think part of the spectrum of that field is? Blue light. We are being bathed in blue light, inhibiting our melatonin. And basically, you know, in daytime it's not a problem, but in the evenings it is, you know, but it's really hard to escape it. You know, you really, I mean, people like Jack Cruz have literally redesigned their homes. They literally put LED panels in walls and the insulation, EMF insulation around the cables and everything. I mean, none of us have got that sort of money to do that sort of stuff. Okay, he does, but, you know, we don't, the majority of us. So all we can do is mitigate it to some extent. The higher the blue light content in your environment, the more fat you need, because you're trying to protect the mitochondria. Fundamentally, that's what you're doing. And the last thing you want to be doing is putting more sugar to do, which is more reactive in the mitochondria. So remember, melatonin is also playing a role as a potent antioxidant that repairs your mitochondria at night while you're sleeping. So it is really important to reduce the damage by eating a species appropriate diet with more fat and zero sugar practically, if you can, minus the ice cream. Well, we've got some indiscretions. We're not perfect. We're not angels. I'm not. And yes, I did have yesterday my low carb, you know, very low carb, you know, that one that I showed, what is it called, the Dina or whatever it's bloody called, that Dana or whatever, that ice cream that I had, which is really low in carbohydrates. I mean, you can have a whole tub, which I did. And I probably got, what was it? About 5 point something grams of carbohydrate, of sugar. That's it for a whole tub. And that's not bad. So I did pig out. Sorry. That's my Sunday pigging out day. I'm a piggy, little piggy. I'm a cute little piggy on Saturday nights. Yes, particular. So yes. Did I just jump down there without realising it? Oh, I must have just clicked right through while I was talking. Oh, fuck. I'm losing it. Anyway, black pepper is overrated. I love black pepper. Oops, it must be overrated. Well, I don't think it's good for birds anyway. So, yeah, I can understand. You're welcome. We covered that earlier. Yes. I do have to say I do like pepper on all my steaks, pepper and salt. So I won't be giving that up. If somebody was telling me it won't give you cancer, but you know, if somebody was to say that, I'm still trying to find a strategy of basically nullifying the effects rather than giving up on it. That's what you should do, but I actually cook with it. Yeah, I know. Can't help it. I actually like it cooked, the taste. Yeah, I'm bad in some regards. Black pepper, mate, black pepper. Look, Lyme disease. There's a lot of factors. Look, it's definitely has autoimmune characteristics. So vitamin D plays a role. Let's put it that way. In that regard, there are things in the environment that could be driving it as well. There are little sort of organisms that potentially, so gut microbiome type things would help as well. So it seems to be basically driven that, but it's something that I don't know enough about. I make comments now and then about Lyme's disease. It is similar to basically to, other types of debilitating sort of disease that really zap your energy and all that. There is an area that I'm investigating currently on Lyme disease having to do with the mitochondria and the effects of the actual disease on mitochondria. So I don't want to give too much away, and I've probably given too much away already because now people will be able to Google and search mitochondria in terms of Lyme. But anyway, don't tell anyone. And I think there's an element there. It's a bit like with gallstones, how methylation plays a bit of a role, and and some of these other things. The body's so interconnected. There's a lot of pathways and a lot of things that are playing a role. Yeah, exactly. Copyright Harry Stefano. Nice one. I'm just joking, But yeah, look, it's something I'm investigating because other people have asked me, but I think there's more to it than just the nutrition side. And I think there is mitochondrial side to it as well. There is some level of mitochondrial damage, and I don't want to give half an answer. I want to give a complete answer. And so when I've worked it out in my head exactly the best way to actually deal with it, I will do a video and explain what I think the best science tells us. Fibromyalgia has similar characteristics, and there it is quite clearly there are mitochondrial issues as well. And there is a protocol that they're using in Europe where they're using a low deuterium water down to 85 parts per million to deal with fibromyalgia and improve the mitochondrial function together with a cleaner diet. So they can actually improve quicker. They can clean out the deuterium levels in the cells, in the mitochondria, and actually try and restore, better mitochondrial function. Something similar may be required for Lyme's, but I need to be, really clear about some of the stuff, and I'm not really clear yet. So I'm doing a deeper dive into it currently, as I'm doing with a couple of other things that I'm looking into. As I talked about it earlier about the mTOR heat shock protein relationship and stuff like that, I'm doing a deeper dive in that and a number of other areas. So at this, I don't want to basically show my hand at this and say, this is it, because I'm still making up my mind about how to best approach it. So at some point, you will get there in that regard, but it's a lot of things. I did notice Dylan say, did you see Elliot's overtone, thiamine? Yeah, thiamine, look, very important for a lot of these diseases which are similar, even the thyroid issue, thiamine, riboflavin, B6, because they help, and also these other ones help also the methylation pathway. Methylation is also involved as well. So all these diseases are manifestations of similar pathology, of this general pathology of really, we've done bad things, inappropriate things to ourselves for a long time. and they slightly manifest slightly differently. But it's mitochondrial in nature, the methylation issues in nature, a lot of these sort of things, why the body's got out of whack. And because of your gene difference, your environment different, and a lot of other things, and the different pathogens that you come in contact with, things manifest slightly different, But a lot of the causal stuff is rooted in our poorer lifestyles in the past in that regard. So there is a poorer nutrition as well, and that poorer nutrition also affects our ability to heal and repair and all that. So, just because you've stopped doing something, if you're not feeding the body with the right micronutrients, it can't actually create the enzymes and provide the cofactors that allow those enzymes to do their job and fix things. So it's very nuanced in that regard. But I actually want to investigate. I'm the sort of person that will investigate every single pathway. And when I'm satisfied completely that I've understood the subject matter and I've got a really good protocol that actually works, otherwise, what I will tell you, if I'm not confident that it actually works, I'm going to say, this is what the science, provides me with the best solutions. It's not the best, but it's better than anyone else has come up with at the moment. And that is at that moment, because research continually moves on. And so as long as you keep yourself up to date, I can always make another video with adding additional options and methods and stuff like that to improve that protocol. And that's how it works. Science, unfortunately, we're quite primitive, and our level of technological advancement is not at a Star Trek level. So we've got a long way to go until we understand all these different pathways, how they interact in a complex way. And so we're basically, a lot of us, and this is why there's a lot of reductionism out there in the approach. Oh, you got this, take this supplement or that or whatever, rather than understanding that there's a whole lot of synergistic relationships and interactions that are happening in the body, and there's a lot of different things that are at play. So, I like to basically get to as close to the truth as possible of understanding what's happening and what the best approach will be. And once I've got that, then I create something to basically inform you guys. That's how I've approached everything in the way I do things. And even with the actual, all these issues with the electrolytes and all that, I went away and looked at the physiology. How much do we excrete? How much do we, really need, and all that, understanding all these sort of pathways and how to support them properly, and then doing the appropriate videos for them. Like anything, you need to know what is actually happening. You just can't, you can just say exactly what everybody else says, the same reduction of stuff, but that's not a solution. And that's why people keep on going from one YouTube channel to another YouTube channel to another YouTube channel to try and see if they can get lucky to get the whole picture. That's why you guys are quite loyal with me, because you understand that that's how I think. I'm trying to pull it all together and give you a more comprehensive picture based on the best research at this point in time of our, that we live in. 10, 20 years in the future, we're going to have even better science, and I'll be able to give you even a more detailed, a better explanation. So it'll be based on the best stuff that's available for me to do the best research. But I think a species appropriate diet ultimately will resolve a lot of these sort of things. Lyme's a bit different. Lyme does have a number of other underlying issues. So, but anyway, I'll get into that in the video. Let's not give too much away. Nurse Black Pepper fucks with me. I don't know. Look, different things. People have all sorts of sensitivities to all sorts of things. I remember myself, I consumed coconut products. Not a problem whatsoever. Another person that I knew reacted and he said, I just cannot. And that person had an Irish background. I go, they must have a salicylate problem, where Southern Europeans don't have salicylate problems because we're adapted. So yeah, immediately I knew, and I said, look, give it up. And they used to also not only react to that, they used to react to a whole lot of other salicylate heavy foods. They just didn't feel that great when they ate them. They said, I didn't feel really great, but they didn't know what was causing. They just thought, oh yeah, I'm just tired or whatever. But once they realized that all these, and I said, you probably got a salicylate sensitivity, they removed all those things, they felt better, so they were reacting to stuff. So, because avocados have salicylates, there's a lot of foods that got salicylates. So once you eliminate them, if you're sensitive, and a lot of Northern Europeans tend to be, and they will suffer. Yeah, I need my black pepper. Sorry. Exactly. That is not a sulfur. Trying to confuse people, aren't you? He is a rascal. He's an absolute rascal. Mainstream. Oh, God. And more frivolities. No, good point. Dan. That disproves all science about glycation. You're right. Yep, if Winnie Pooh is so smart, yep, you're right. Yep, I'm wrong. I agree with you completely. There you go, guys. Salad Boy and Frank are correct, because Winnie the Pooh is the smart one and he loves honey. I think we covered that. Yep, about reductionism and stuff like that. Oh, don't be so. Oh, Shell. God almighty. All those little kids out there that follow Winnie the Pooh are going to be devastated. How could you, Shell? Pooh head, Pooh brain. You're such colourful people. Such nice, colourful people, aren't you? Oops, where am I? Oh, there I am. You see that, bird brain? They know you by reputation. It sounds like it. Must be psychic. Psychic Pooh. Psychic Pooh. It releases a whiff. Yes, exactly. Look, it helps. It definitely helps. Look, they do, and all that sort of stuff. There are other, like I do take. There's a. I'll actually show you guys. Hold on. See. It's actually Lactobacillus reuteri, and both these strains are really good. Actually, my mate's teeth have improved as well, because it actually helps with also your oral microbiome as well. I keep it in the fridge anyway. And you don't need to room temperature, but it is getting summer, getting warmer. It will last longer if you keep it in there. and it's one chewable. And these strains also of that type, both those strains, but one in particular, both increase sperm count. Good for the old fella down there. So this is this is the Swedish company, isn't it? Yes, I believe it is the Swedish company. And they have the only patent for these strains in the world. So, yes, my mates love this. It's improved their poo and everything else. I mean, they're not on a carnivore diet, but they've been taking this and noticing a lot of differences, and they're really happy about it. They love me about it. I was going to make a video about this. I will. And cover. There's a lot of things that that these strains can help with. So I just haven't got around doing all my bacterial strains that can actually be used for all sorts of things. It's a series of stuff that I want to do next year about all these different bacterial strains and what they can do in the body and how you can manipulate the body in different ways, biohack, so to speak. So look forward to that in the new year. Currently being tested on me and my friends. I mean, you know, what are friends for other than being used as lab rats? Should say that to probably my mate Sean's probably listening. Is that what you consider me? He's actually my brother. Actually, Kim and Sean, they are my brothers actually. So we're pretty close. So basically, they expect me to say something naughty about them. That's usual. That's what family is. Picks on each other. Anyway. Yeah, it is coming up. It is coming up. It is important, that one. Yes. It's a struggle when you've got a regular job. Look, you know, I occasionally do like cold shower type things. Yep. So I do believe in them, the hormetic effect, but I don't do it on a regular basis. And I think I've only done a couple of minutes at my maximum. That was a struggle, I can tell you. I don't know how some people do 10, 20 minutes under the cold water. Ugh. It's a struggle. I actually struggled the first time. I could only do 30 seconds, if that. Yeah, so I'm getting better at it. I can stay longer under. Nothing like that soybean mayo. Is there a study that shows the microbiome studies aren't good? Like, what are the mitochondrial microbiome based on, and how we look? In many cases, there's a lot of idiocies out there about the microbiome. It's like I said earlier, you know, fiber will actually increase acetone. Well, that can actually be converted to glucose. It's one of the fewer short-chain fatty acids. So not a good idea. The other thing is, if you have ever checked that thing that I've done, which I've got that posted thing, which is called which I've posted around a couple of times, that some of you would have seen it, hopefully, which is on my discussion page, which apparently not everyone can see for whatever bloody reason. YouTube again, yes. So I have pinned it on one of my older older streams, yeah. And it basically covered the actual the the vegan sort of falsehoods of veganism and stuff like that. And it pretty much, going through and debunking some of that. Like I actually show a study that shows Prevotella that increases on a plant-based diet. The more plants you eat increases the interleukin, the inflammatory biomarkers. And bifidobacteria, which a lot of the strains that decrease inflammation in the gut actually increase in an environment where more meat is consumed. So it sort of nullifies all that bullshit about the gut microbiome and the importance of fiber, doesn't it? It, turns it on its head, that whole notion. But people ignore all that. They go, oh, short-chain fatty acid and all that. Get over it. Proteins and fats produce just as much and better quality stuff. So it's just crap on crap. How do you test? What tests would you recommend to see what genes you have in regards to deficiencies you might have to supplement? You shouldn't have to supplement. Even if you've got genes, certain things, you just change the sort of foods you eat. I just don't consume as much liver or eggs as I should and tend to have a choline supplement. Probably the only, if anybody asked me, what would be the only supplement if I was in the tropics and I didn't have to worry about vitamin D, what would be the only other supplement that you would supplement in your whole life other than eating meat, animal-based foods and stuff like that? I would say taurine. That would be the only thing. I would just supplement taurine, nothing else. Simple as that. It's the quickest answer that I can give in terms about supplementation, because all the other animal foods will give you what you want. Taurine, on the other hand, the biosynthesis declines with age. And as it declines, so does our health, because it plays such important roles in the liver, for liver health, brain health, heart health. It's everywhere. It's endemic. So in so many areas, it acts as an antioxidant. It's countless. The video is coming. So I would say that is the only thing that I would supplement in that regard. Anyway, but in terms of tests, I did 23andMe, but their $100 test is shit because they've downgraded it quite a bit. Luckily, I've got the old data that I downloaded, and a lot of the stuff that they actually removed, they've actually put it into their more expensive $200 product. But that's what I use, 23andMe. You'd have to do the $200 one if you were to get the sort of information you need to look at the ApoE and all the other sort of stuff, because it won't be in the cheaper one, unfortunately. It used to be, but it's not anymore. So you would not be able to know, you'd have to then go and do another test and all that. So it'd be better just to do either the 200 one, or ask your doctor whether you can do a comprehensive gene test from a company that is well established and not going to go out of business. Because a lot of the actual online companies, a lot of them have gone out of business. So it's 23andMe, a few, and Ancestral, and a couple of the others that have remained. The majority of the others have gone out of business, a lot of them, because it's just, they can't compete in that regard. And then there will be specific labs that do a lot of these sort of tests, comprehensive tests, that are basically providing these for, let's say, for hospitals and stuff like that, where, let's say you've got a premature child, there may be some underlying issues with the family, and they want to do a whole genetic panel on that child. And so those sort of companies are going to remain in business because the medical system is using them. And so your doctor may know of a company. So ask your doctor, and if they've got no idea, then you can do a bit of research, or you can basically take the same option as I did, the pathway of 23andMe. So there are privacy issues with 23andMe. Unfortunately, I live outside the US, so it doesn't really bother me. Inside the US, there are issues with 23andMe, I think, for US citizens. So I don't know where you're based. So yeah, you have to look at the privacy side of things. Yeah, be very careful on that front, especially if you're reliant on insurance in that regard. So yeah, that's all I can say. Yeah, exactly. That's yeah. They used to provide raw data and for a lot of things, and now they've removed. I mean, I've looked at my list, my original list, and the current one that I downloaded last time. I remember I was telling you guys, and it's shrunk quite a bit. They've actually removed a lot of the snips out of the product they sold me. And the problem is, when you go and use their system for certain things, I sometimes put in the actual, looking at a certain gene or whatever, and it's not there. And I'm going, shit, they've removed it. So I go to my text file and I basically search for it, I find it, and then I actually compare with the Snippedia to work out, which one I am. And it really pisses me off that I don't have that convenience anymore because they've removed it. They should have basically, people that bought originally, they should have left them the way they were. But they've wholesale, they've ripped people's, they've removed for everyone, and that really annoyed me. But anyway, I can't do much about it. Yes, unfortunately, it's bloody annoying. Yeah, I know. Look, I wanted to basically know, because it just makes it easier. See, at the time, I'm dealing with reversing cardiovascular issues, and so I needed to know to basically look at all the different pathways. So, but if you don't really have any underlying issues or whatever, just eat good food and you should be okay. You probably don't need to. Depends on where you are at the end of the day and how much you want to know. Oh, you'll know. If you're basically, in that area, your stomach and all that, you're actually in your gut and all that, you're actually feeling sort of like motility issues and stuff like that, you'll know you're not getting enough, not producing enough bile. If you're basically, your feces are too light colored, that's also likely that you're not producing enough bile, because your feces should be basically a sort of a browny color, If they're a light, like tanny, really light, it means you're not producing enough bile. So that's a sort of a giveaway in that regard. There can be other factors that also create that type of poo as well, but bile, not enough bile, is one of them as well. So yeah, in that regard. So yes. And a number of years ago, I used to get tinny and all that. And I can tell you, I'll give you one hint, what's going to be that video, taurine. I took taurine for my heart, but it also improved my bile. So there you go, you're getting a bit of it. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's another giveaway. You usually have loose stools. You've got sort of like fatty streaks in the actual globules of fat, stuck to the feces and all that. Yeah, it's a bit like that. It's really yucky. yucky and sticky and floaty because of all the fats. It floats to the surface. A lot of the, so yeah, it's a giveaway, that you're not producing enough. Yeah, very good, Chill. It reminded me, brought back great memories. I generally do not use vitamin D supplements because I usually get it from the sun all year round. Plus, in the winter, I usually I fly to the tropics for a month to soak up enough to basically replenish my vitamin D levels. And I get a bit from a high quality cod liver oil, and usually I'm fine in that regard. But this year, because of the C19, I've been supplementing. And I don't see a problem with supplementing if you're dealing with a deficiency, but I do see benefits from getting it from the sun. You're also going to be generating cholesterol sulfur, which is a water-soluble version of cholesterol, which is really good for the body as well. That's for another video. There is also, more to vitamin D being produced in the skin, and the signaling, also the UV that is playing an important role to the body as well as additional energy, but also signaling. So there's a lot of reasons to get it from the sun and not to avoid the sun. But there are circumstances where you have to supplement, whether they are deficiencies or dealing with the respiratory infections to try and keep them at bay if you get one of the nasty ones, like the current one. And as I've said, 3 days, 40,000 IUs, and 7 days, 20,000 IUs, which is the equivalent of 10,000 intravenously and 20,000 intravenously for 3 days, which is what the Spanish study showed us, which I've talked about before. So it's for specific things in that regard. But currently, unfortunately, a lot of the vitamin D supplements out there are, not really up to scratch. Now, there are some ones that I've actually talked about and shown in the past, and they tend to be the ones that have got either no seed oils, but it's either an extra virgin olive oil or an MCT or a coconut palm oil, blah, blah, saturated fat type oil that it's based in, and which is much safer. Let's put it that way. You can also get like lozenge type vitamin D, which has got no fat whatsoever. It's just the vitamin D, which means that you consume it with the food, and basically you get the fats from the food to increase the uptake. But at the same time, I usually recommend people consume even their supplements, whatever source they come from, with food, because you'll get more vitamin D in, more of it, with the fats in helping with the transport. So that's what I usually do. And you should always take your vitamin D midday. I would say between 11 and 12 is the best time to take vitamin D. Shouldn't take it in the morning because it creates signaling problems. The body goes, why am I getting such a high dose when it's supposedly morning? My eyes are telling me, signaling to me, there is near infrared coming up over the horizon, and I'm being, in terms of circadian rhythms, I've been signaling. You know what's going to happen when you take in the morning vitamin D, you're not going to get as big a cortisol spike. If you don't get that cortisol spike, you'll feel drowsy all day or not really, really up to par, because you won't have had suppressed melatonin sufficiently. You need that cortisol spike. You need to go out there when the sun's coming up and, not look at the sun, but be out in that daylight, that early daylight, so you can signal to the body that, I need to ramp up cortisol to wake up this body for the day. And that's what happens. And that's another reason why you shouldn't be eating in the morning, and humans never ate. I know from agricultural days when people are still farming in the early hours of the night and they came in and broke their breakfast in midday. That's when you should be breaking your breakfast, really. As our tribal people, when they went out and hunted and brought back an animal, that's when you break your fast. And at that time, you'll be exposed to the majority of vitamin D. And that's when you should be getting your vitamin D in that way. Not in the evening or late afternoon, because you're going to be suppressing melatonin and you need it to get good sleep and good repair of your mitochondria. So that's pretty much it. I think I've covered that pretty well. Anyway, now it's probably about the I take vitamin D in the winter up here in the North Hemisphere. Lack of sun. Got to get somewhere. Summertime, I don't take any. Yes, look. This year's been really annoying for me because I haven't been able to get to Bali. I haven't been able to get to, Bangkok or anywhere in Asia. Get out there and really enjoy and suck in the sun. Or Phuket or whatever. So, even my mate down here who's got a home that's the other mate, but my other mate here in Hobart, he's got a home in northern Thailand, and he can't get away as well. He's trapped because of the lockdown situation. So he's not bloody happy either. Yes. But yeah, what can you do? So, but if you can get it from a really good source, I think you had asked me last time, Shell, and you got the same one. Can't remember the extra virgin olive oil one, or whether it was that or the MCT. Can't remember now. But yeah, either one, fairly good. That's what I'm using. I'm basically using the extra virgin olive oil. And the only reason for that is it is slightly cheaper. Anyway, I've heard you mention deuterium a few times. Can you explain a bit about that? Do you have a video on it? I will be making a video. You'll have to wait on it in that regard. But just quickly, certain foods have different levels of deuterium, and the concentration of that it's a different isotope. Hydrogen is an isotope. There are two stable types of forms. One is called just hydrogen. The other one's called deuterium, which is double the weight. So what it's got one additional thing in its nucleus. It's got a neutron. So simple hydrogen just got a proton. This one's got a neutron, and that neutron is slightly larger, heavier, and when that actually ends up in the water of the mitochondria, the inner part, and then is basically those hydrogen ions are pumped through the electron chain, that larger sized deuterium component, the neutron, that tries to come through the actual rotating engine. Because it's too large, what it does is it will break those motors. And if you break those motors, you don't produce energy. Now, you will produce some from lipolysis and the TCA cycle. So in the inner, from within the cell into the actual mitochondria, there is actual energy being produced, but very little, okay? So a lot of that is to strip off all these hydrogens in order to basically be able to oxidize and provide, pyruvate. You're looking at 2 ATP, a very small amount of ATP. At the end of the day, you want large amounts of ATP that come from the electron chain. So the whole idea is to basically generate this water, and it feeds into the citric cycle, and that citric cycle produces more of this water, metabolic water, and how much deuterium is in there will depend on potential damage you could cause. The body tries to de-deteriorate or reduce deuterium depletion, it's called, but as a short word, it's de-deterioration, not deterioration, but deteriorate of the actual area in order to basically reduce the amount of this sort of stuff that could damage those ATP synthases. Is called the last part of that complex. It rotates and actually produces from funneling through from the inner to the matrix, funneling through these protons and basically generating ATP anyway. But actually, we should have a mitochondrial thing here just quickly. Good picture. I like this one. I'm going to probably use it in my video. And okay, here's the little bloody organelle. That's what they call these little things in cells. They call them organelles, but it's mitochondria, okay? This is the matrix, okay? So here's your matrix in here. This is where your TCA cycle, pyruvate actually ends up in here. So it's got 10 enzymatic pathways all the way from the cytosol in to the matrix. And it's basically through here. The TCA cycle, the Krebs cycle, that is it basically in here, in this part, okay? This part here is called the inner membrane space, okay? This is where basically the gradient of the protons builds up, okay? Along these areas, these membrane areas, you've got electron chains, okay? And as these gradients build up, they will move through those, these little ATP synthase machines that are going to be sitting there. So so you will have these pumps through here. So complex 1, complex 2, and complex 1, complex 3, and complex 4 are the ones that are actually pumping through here all the protons into this area, okay? Now, if you were to pump through here into this space, let's say a bit of deuterium, a neutron, and that neutron came back through, let's say the little ATP synthase machine was there, so it comes through here, so these are pumping through this way. That's why they have to energize the electrons. They strip off the electrons, And so the pumps can actually utilize the electrons to power up the chain, this electron chain through here. And so they power it up to basically make those pumps pump, pulling in into this inner mitochondrial space, okay? Inner mitochondrial membrane, as they call it. Or we'll just call it simplistically inner mitochondrial space. And then, let's say if it's there, there's no connection between, these are just, these complexes here, they're not transferring over to the complex any, you know, they're not connected in that regard. These are just here, these initial ones are there to power up and support the pumping, okay? The last one is basically just pulling. Once you get a gradient, you will get a flow of protons coming through there, and as they come through, you will basically get ADPs having phosphate attached to them as that process, and that's what ATP synthase does, and generating that energy for the cell. So it'll create, you know, 36 of those. It'll create far more energy than what just glycolysis would create. So there's initial steps. Those initial steps there that are actually going through are basically all part of creating this metabolic water inside this matrix space, and that metabolic water then can provide these protons, these hydrogen ions, which for the actual electron chain to utilize to generate energy. This is in the most simplistic way I'm trying to keep it. And so these ones, as long as you don't basically get too much deuterium in there, foods that are very high, the body can sort of cleave off these and get rid of them, okay? And can use them as growth factors in other parts of the body. So you can get rid of them. They do, if you had zero deuterium, you'd be dead. So you still need it, but you don't need it here in this area, damaging the production of energy. And that's basically, how you want to avoid certain foods that are very high in it, because there is a threshold where the body can't cope. It can only produce so much energy to basically be able to remove this sort of stuff, to basically then have cleaner hydrogen, ions that basically will provide the protons with zero neutrons in that mix, in this space here. We don't want any neutrons in this space, because if there's any neutrons in this space, these neutrons will come through these complex fives. And the more of these motors you bust, the more and more over time your mitochondria become less efficient at producing energy. And we're constantly busting motors, and our mitochondria become weaker and weaker and less energy producing, and we become susceptible to all sorts of disease because we can't produce enough energy to repair, and we age as a consequence. So there's always some damage. So if you want to live longer and you just want to basically end up dying quickly because there's no more cell division, a bit like the camels. The camels are a deuterium depleting machine. All their water comes from fat in their hump, and all the cactus water is very low in deuterium. It's even lower than fat in some cases. Some of the, because it's UV radiation depletes deuterium out of the leaves and out of the cacti where it's holding water. So that water is deuterium depleted. And so they are deuterium depletion machines, the ultimate, the camel. And so they live a very long life and then just drop dead because they can't do any more cell division, but they never suffer chronic disease or cancer. They're cancer proof. So if you want to be cancer proof, just keep away, hydrate with fat, not with water, keep water to a minimum as much as you want, and you upregulate your antidiuretic hormones. And basically, you want to basically keep your sugar to zero. Now, I don't do that. You know me, I eat a bit of sugar through ice creams and stuff like that. I'm not perfect. I'm telling you what the science tells us. I'm not telling you what I do. That's, if I want to live a few years or less, that's, I have to wear that. But if you want to live longer, you basically have to make sure that you keep deuterium down to those low levels. It's pretty much a video will be made on that subject matter, and we'll explain things a bit more in detail, how all these things interact and work and all that. And that will be a series that I'm doing next year, which will be on light, magnetism, electromagnetism, basically, and water and deuterium. And then I'll be tying all the stuff together to explain how they all work together. Anyway, that is to be had in the future. And while I've got some of the material together, I'm writing out some of the actual language that I'm going to use. Obviously, I'm colourful in the way I express myself. I never follow my exact approach and all that, but I have to have an outline of the language that I'm going to use, because making videos that you guys don't understand is useless. So I need to keep it to a level. Yeah, probably making up rumors again. T1, you naughty boy. He melted his sauna. Oh God, no love. God, he's taking a break. Exactly. He's had enough of you characters. There's a Western price thing. Yes, I have as well. I'll throw out here that some people warm against it, mainly Jack Cruz types. Yeah, they do. Look. As I said, I don't think that it's the best way to get vitamin D. You should get it from the sun, but what doesn't have some downside? Food in general has a downside, creates oxidation. Everything, exercise, what doesn't create? Everything does. At the end of the day, if your circumstances are that you basically can't get it from the sun, and you've got a lethal virus, and you've got a virus that basically only can be dealt with and mitigated through higher doses, at the end of the day, I would rather survive, and then I can improve my health the following year, rather than die because for ideological reasons, I'm not going to take that. That's stupid. So that is why I criticize people like that, because they're reductionist and they're not, we live in a real world, guys. Things are not, we don't live in a perfect world where we can structure our life or do things in the perfect way the expert has told us. Okay? Or I've told you. The reality is, what I'm bringing to you is the best science. How you apply it is going to be depending on your circumstances. None of us are saints. You're not going to do it perfectly all the time. If you do it 90% of the time or 95% of the time, you're going to be better off in the long run. But, let's not. At the end of the day, they're actually opening up the state again in Tasmania, which means there's going to be people that are coming in from interstate, and potentially, while I missed the first wave of getting the C19, this time I may get it, because I usually go for a long walk, and then I walk with my mate into basically Salamanca. It's called the Hobart Market now. It's not the Salamanca Market. And obviously with tourists, this week that we were down there were some people from Sydney that were actually had or that actually had come around to some of the stall holders that we know and interact with, because my mates had a stall down there, and they're not running it currently. They've got one of their other friends running it, and because they've got another business, so it's not worth their while, as you can understand. And then there's other people that are interacting with people interstate. So I'm going, at some point, I'm going to get it. I'm going to have my vitamin D there ready to go. And I can tell you, I'll be putting, I'll probably go beyond the 40,000 I use, up to 50 or 60,000 I use, because I take minoquinone 4 as well, so I don't really worry about the calcium side of things. And I will basically may even go 100, because basically I want to guarantee that Harry survives, and I don't give a shit what some expert or some other people sit there waving and say, oh, you did it wrong. Well, fuck you. Go find a corner and die. I'm basically going to do what is going to guarantee Harry is still around next year to entertain you guys. There you go. Yeah, it does, actually. It does have several meanings, So we won't go into that. Dirty old mind, dirty bird. Shit. Well, nearly coming to an end. We're down up to 3.5 hours. God, fuck, what? Yeah, the Rosetta one, the Norwegian one, the one that I've shown before, get that one. Do not get the other shit. That is done traditionally and is safe. The other stuff are full of aldehydes and primary oxidative products. I do not recommend any of that other sort of shit. Yes, it needs to be a good product. Just reminding you guys, the brand, share screen. That's it. There it is. That's the stuff you want. This is stuff that I got for Dad, because it's got also more phospholipids and this other type of component as well that seems to be good for the brain. So you can get in these capsules, but I prefer getting it in this. Less processed, less deuterium. So that's why I get it in this form. Anyway, it's the cod liver oil side. Yes, and I did make a rude comment about that earlier. I will not repeat myself. I will. As long as you're basically subbing to me and you've basically got your notifications, YouTube will make sure that they do not inform you that I'm... What I usually do is, when I do those sort of things, I'll be doing them as premieres, because what it does is I can interact with you guys when I'm doing a premiere. And I did the last nights as well as a premiere. Also, when you do it as a premiere, their system is set up for the premiere, for the advertising compartment and all that. They haven't separated for, whether people are monetized or not. So what happens is automatically they have to announce it, and it gets announced. So it actually is better to do a premiere. I mean, last night I actually premiered. I'd actually posted. I was going to actually post that one for Monday, and then I said, "Oh fuck it, I'll do it in the evening." And so I posted it. It was 9:23, and I posted it for 9:30 in the evening. So 7 minutes. And a lot of people go, "Oh, I just didn't find out about it. Somebody else told me." Well, the notification would have been very short, and I do apologize about that. I probably didn't explain that. I should have. But, you know, yeah, I was thinking about, you know, and I changed my mind. But I usually do premieres, and when you do a premiere, it does do a notification automatically. So, yes. Yeah, it's something else that does a bit of hopping as well, apparently. Let's get through all this as fast as possible because I'm going to about to sign off. Hello, Angela. Good to see you. And I've got the evening one. So probably Angela will hopefully be on that one because that's the Eurasian one. Later today in 4 hours' time from now. And we're flying. I'm flying through these. Look at the speed. Speedy Gonzalez. Oh. Very, I'd love to know thoughts about, yeah, look, we're basically about to close down. So any questions, they will have to be asked later on. I'm just flowing through because sometimes my chat thing doesn't come up. So I need to basically go right through, and I've lost the whole thing. That just went away. Oh, for fuck's sake, StreamYard. Anyway. No idea, mate. I've got no idea what. I think it's all the rat studies that got to his head. You know, problem is with all those rat studies is it's not only pork, fat, lard. They combine seed oils and sugar and lard together. And the reason why they put a bit of lard there is so they can go there. It's the animal fat. It's dodgy as dog shit. That sort of science, you know, because we say that animal fats are protective. Well, they say, well, no, it's not. Look, these rats are getting sick, but they ignore the Randall cycle, and they ignore that they're basically also putting in their seed oils and sugar. It's actually pure sugar that they actually put. The rat chow, it's not glucose. This is the problem, people. It's not glucose. It's sugar, most of it. It's a sugar, watery syrup thing that they put in their water sort of thing. You know, because it's easy. It's cheap. But, you know, I would say, that's a bit like honey, fructose. And so, I mean, but when you've got cognitive dissonance, you ignore those things, those facts, when you've got a good story. So, yes, that's how I would respond to that as well. T1, just, yeah, really? Smile. Show some teeth. Yes. Basically, you two are very helpful right at the end. All that. What the fuck? You know, sort of. Yes. That sort of face. Yes. Anyway, great chatting with you lovely people. Those who are still going to be awake or have not passed out yet. You know, I know you do some certain things in discretions and all that. You know, those people, I will see you in less than 4 hours' time, in 3 hours and 50 minutes' time. And the rest, I'll have to have a nice juicy steak and then a bit of a walk up the hill, a real hill. And then basically after that, I will see you, some of you lovely people, in the later one. So take care. Otherwise, I will see you through the week or at next week's live stream. Anyway, thanks, guys. Good to see you. good to see Minnie Mouse. That's good to see you here. And, look after yourselves. Keep well, and we will chat soon with some of you and next week with the rest of you. Bye.